Buzz. For a moment, countless people in the 5 divine realms were shocked. How is it possible? Have gods perished? Heavenly Tao death knell represents the death of a god, and 2 gods died? Who died? At the junction of the South Sea Divine Realm and the Central Sea Divine Realm, the 3 gods who were chatting with Qi Xing and Swordvine 1A moment earlier were all horrified at this moment. The 3 of them felt a chill down their spines and broke into a cold sweat. From the moment Swordvine 1 and Qi Xing disappeared, they knew that something was going to happen, but they didn't expect it to be so fast and ruthless. It's over. Did the sea-quelling god take action? I don't think so. If the sea-quelling god wanted to take action, he would have done so long ago. He doesn't need to care about our identities at all. Does anyone dare to challenge him? Then who could it be? Qi Xing and Swordvine 1 aren't weak, especially Swordvine 1. Even if he's at the god-slaying level, he shouldn't have been able to be killed so quickly. Why the F***ck do you care so much? Let's leave now. Swish. At this moment, the 3 of them activated all their secret techniques. They didn't dare to stay any longer, fearing that they would die on the spot if they were any slower. In the Central Sea Divine Realm, an ancient divine door slowly opened. A man in black walked out of the door. As he calculated with his fingers, he frowned slightly. The God-sealing heavenly book? You've returned in the end. The Phoenix divine race in the South Sea Divine Realm. The Phoenix Patriarch was horrified. Phoenix ancestor, did you do this? Feng Yu and Lei Heng also looked at the sea-quelling god in shock, wondering who else could have killed 2 gods in a row. However, the Phoenix ancestor's expression changed slightly. What do you mean by I did it? It has nothing to do with me. Someone is just warning the gods in the sea realm. As for who it is, you won't be able to guess it. So don't guess blindly. Feng Yu asked, is he the person behind little junior brother? The Phoenix ancestor didn't respond. Instead, he looked at the place where Qi Xing and Swordvine 1 died and slowly said, Feng Tianwu, now only the Phoenix divine race is left in the South Sea Divine Realm. From today onwards, the South Sea Divine Realm will belong to our Phoenix divine race, and it will be directly separated from the Central Sea Divine Realm. If anyone dares to blame you for this, kill them. If any god dares to harass you, call me to kill them. Yes, Phoenix ancestor. Although the Phoenix Patriarch didn't know what happened, Feng Yu's guess must be right. It was very likely that the person behind Han Fei had taken action. This attack was as powerful as a bolt of lightning and directly killed 2 gods, which was terrifying. The 2 gods who attacked the South Sea Divine Realm had both died. Which god else still dared to take action casually? The Phoenix Patriarch's mind was racing. This move was simply awesome. The sea realm was a trial ground, and even the gods were reduced to pawns. It was better for the Phoenix divine race not to get involved in this matter. It would be good if Feng Yu went to the chaotic sea Void Temple. Eldest senior brother, senior sister Shenlu, and senior brother Undead saw this scene through the void. Senior sister Shenlu stood on eldest senior brother's shoulder and said indifferently, why can't I see clearly the road they paved for little junior brother? Senior brother Undead said leisurely, perhaps even they themselves can't see it clearly. Eldest senior brother said, the 2 of you don't care about others' paths. Shenlu, you don't have much time left. I'll give you another 10,000 years. Shenlu frowned. Do you have to go? Eldest senior brother's voice was leisurely as if he was sighing. Teacher is waiting for me. The death of two gods shocked the sea realm. In the chaotic ice domain, Han Fei and Xia Shaochan were also shocked. Han Fei was stunned. Fifth senior brother, what astronomical phenomenon is this? Why is a heavenly Tao bell ringing? Fifth senior brother said casually, it's not a bell, but a death knell to mourn the dead gods. Puff. Cough, cough. Xia Shaochan choked, so did Han Fei. Both of them were stunned. What do you mean? Mourn the dead gods? You mean? Fifth senior brother said leisurely, two gods have perished. Two? Han Fei looked at fifth senior brother in surprise, and the latter smiled. Yes, two. Han Fei gaped and couldn't say anything for a long time. Xia Shaochan asked, who can kill a god? Fifth senior brother smiled. Although gods are not easy to kill, they are not invincible. In this world, there are many people who can kill gods. Ordinary gods are vulnerable when facing real experts. Han Fei was lost for words. Fifth senior brother, how should I understand the real experts you mentioned? Are gods not strong enough? Sizzle, ah. Fifth senior brother took a sip, and there seemed to be a trace of disdain in his voice. What gave you the illusion that gods must be very strong? Little junior brother, don't look so far away now. Your supreme divine technique is still there. It won't be too late for you to think about the god realm when you break through the barrier of the supreme divine technique. Xia Shaochan didn't dare to speak. Are the disciples of the Void Temple so strong? They don't seem to care about gods at all. Han Fei was full. He had a guess in his heart, but he didn't know if it was right. However, it was obvious that he had nothing to do in the South Sea divine realm now. Even the gods had perished. At this moment, no one would go to the South Sea divine realm unless they were fools. Immediately, Han Fei cleared his mind. Fifth senior brother, I'll stay here for a few days. Fifth senior brother grinned from ear to ear. Great. You'll cook, okay? Han Fei nodded. Okay. But please do me a favor, senior brother. Buzz. An almost rotten coffin appeared here. Xia Shaochan's heart suddenly tightened and she stared at the coffin. At this moment, she was a little excited and nervous. Finally, this day had come. Seeing this, fifth senior brother said, no hurry. Sister-in-law, finish my wine first. Han Fei said, she has to reach the immortal level first? Fifth senior brother nodded slightly. She has waited for so long. She probably won't mind waiting a little longer. Xia Shaochan also nodded slightly. I'm going to cultivate in seclusion. Let's talk about it after I become an immortal. Han Fei said, enter my origin star and cultivate in seclusion. Okay. Without further ado, Han Fei entered his origin star with Xia Shaochan. Xia Shaochan was going to cultivate in seclusion, and he also had something to do. 2. The eighth vine had returned. When Han Fei came to the demon purification pot, he saw a drop of dew lying quietly on the leaf of the eighth vine. This drop of dew was obviously a reward from the demon purification pot for taking the eighth vine back. In his eyes, information emerged. Name, Dew of Origin. Introduction in the chaotic era, before the creation of heaven and earth and the establishment of all laws, there was a divine dew, called the Dew of Origin. The dew of origin can nurture the initial life of chaos, nourish the initial laws of chaos, transform into the initial great Tao of chaos, and give rise to nature treasures. With a single drop of the dew of origin, only one birth can be chosen. Effect: give birth to a life, a law, a great Tao, or a treasure. Note: the dew of origin can only be found by chance. Hiss. Wow, there's actually a treasure of this level? In other words, could it be that the dew of origin was the source of all races? A drop of the dew of origin gave birth to an ancient race from the chaotic era? Apart from ancient creatures, this thing could also give birth to supreme treasures, such as the creation divine prison. This drop of dew could give birth to treasures of that level. As for the laws of origin and the great Taos of origin, he wasn't clear about the exact differences between them and the current laws and great Taos. However, he had an all-knowing fifth senior brother in the chaotic ice domain, whom he could turn to whenever he encountered a problem. In the chaotic ice domain, fifth senior brother was still eating. Seeing Han Fei appear again, he couldn't help but ask, "Little junior brother, want some more?" However, Han Fei wasn't in the mood. He said directly, "Fifth senior brother, I have a question. How are the laws of origin, or the great Taos of origin, different from the current laws or great Taos?" Fifth senior brother's eyes lit up. Of course they can't be the same. Do you know what the words, the primordial chaos, mean? Han Fei shook his head. If he knew, why would he bother to ask? Fifth senior brother smiled and said, "For example, the great Tao of strength that you have grasped now is to enter the Tao with strength and then slowly understand more of it. And the great Tao of strength of origin is the birth of power, which means that after you grasp the great Tao of strength of origin, your comprehension of the great Tao of strength will be complete. No matter what the great Tao of strength contains, you will be able to grasp it all in an instant. This is also why in the chaotic era, the strong masters of some races were born extremely powerful, even comparable to gods. Do you think they can be the same thing? Wouldn't this be like reaching perfection in a single step? Fifth senior brother shrugged. That's why countless strong masters and countless big clans were born in the chaotic era. It's because they were ridiculously strong. Han Fei thought for a moment. Is the law the same? Fifth senior brother said, "Of course, let me still use the law of strength as an example. There are countless laws of strength. Ordinary people can become peerless experts after walking several of them to the extreme. However, the law of strength of origin contains all the states of the law of strength. The law of strength you're cultivating now is cultivated according to the law derived from the law of strength of origin." Sizzle. Ah. Looking at the dumbfounded Han Fei, fifth senior brother said leisurely, "Little junior brother, you must make good use of the dew of origin. If you use it well, you can become the strongest overnight, or even become a god in a day. If you don't use it well, it will be a waste." Han Fei asked in a low voice, "Senior brother, do you know about the dew of origin?" Fifth senior brother smiled and said, "Yes, that's why the demon purification pot is so popular." Han Fei's heart sank. This was only the 8th vine, but there was already something like the dew of origin. What would be born when the 9th vine returned? Han Fei looked at fifth senior brother, who smiled and said, "What the 9th demon purification divine vine will produce is meant to deal with the ominous. Don't think too much about it." "Thank you for answering my questions, fifth senior brother." Han Fei wasn't disappointed to hear that the ninth vine was aimed at the ominous. Dealing with the ominous was equally important to him. Returning to his origin star, Han Fei thought for a moment and had an answer in his heart. Although the effect of the dew of origin was powerful, he had to use it carefully. Creating a new race of life was meaningless to him or to the sea realm. A great Tao of origin could immediately allow him to comprehend the great Tao to the extreme. This might be very strong, but he had many great Taos. Perhaps it could make a certain great Tao abnormally powerful, but since the chaotic era, no one had been able to win against the ominous with a single great Tao. So he could give up on this choice. Supreme nature treasures were very powerful. This drop of dew of origin could give birth to a supreme nature treasure that exclusively belonged to him. This tempted Han Fei, but no matter how tempted he was, this couldn't push his current path forward. Therefore, he only had one choice, which was to nurture a law of origin. With his dual spiritual heritages, according to his guess, he should be able to master two origin laws at the same time, life and death. Among them, the requirements to comprehend the law of life were too harsh. Perhaps there were people in the world who could, but they would definitely not be able to master it completely. However, the dew of origin could provide him with the most complete law of life. This was what he urgently needed now. Although it seemed extravagant to nurture a law with the dew of origin because a law couldn't compare to a supreme nature treasure in value, it was of great significance to his special dual spiritual heritages. This meant that he could comprehend his original law without needing to go to the river of origin. Since he had made up his mind, he immediately swallowed the drop of dew of origin. With his thoughts, the origin spiritual heritage began to operate. The dew of origin was placed in it, blooming with some power that was similar to divinity, but seemed to be stronger than divinity. Buzz. In an instant, Han Fei's consciousness seemed to be immersed in a warm river. It was as if he could feel a tolerant power in every part of his body, flesh, and every cell. Even his soul seemed to have been gently cleansed. Han Fei was so immersed in it that he couldn't extricate himself. After a long time, Han Fei finally felt that his body seemed to have turned into a river, flowing like water. He was like a river flowing between the heavens and earth, flowing through the sea of stars and the stars. A seed was absorbing the myriad techniques of the heavens, absorbing the colorful dust drifting in the chaos, and then sprouting and growing. He seemed to sense everything growing in this tree, blooming, bearing fruits, withering, decaying. However, at the root of this tree, there was still a trace of vitality. It was not extinguished. This trace of vitality was bound by the rotten tree. He wanted to break free. He wanted to break the shackles. After countless years, this trace of vitality finally broke through the shackles. He completely fused himself into this rotten wood. After a long period of absorption, he finally revived. Han Fei continued to flow. He sensed that countless stars were born in the river, and countless lives were descending. He felt that he was vegetation. Wind, rain, earth, countless creatures, and even the stars themselves. He seemed to be everywhere. Everything in the world was me, yet not me. Some people were fighting, their bodies were broken, and their lives were lost. However, Han Fei could clearly sense that although their lives had disappeared, the river that represented their lives had returned to the place where life should have existed. His flesh and blood seemed to melt in this world, returning to a time when nothing had happened. Their souls were also a kind of life, returning to a sea that belonged to the soul. The river of life had flowed past the sea. Han Fei had been flowing. He had seen the rise and fall of all things, life and death. Life nurtured everything, encompassed everything, and even death, as if it were an unending and tireless will. In his origin star, the origin spiritual heritage in Han Fei's body emitted light. In his body, countless laws surrendered. No laws dared to move when the origin spiritual heritage emitted light. They didn't even tremble, as if they were completely silent. After a long time, Han Fei couldn't tell how long it had been. He felt that it was very long, but everything seemed to be fleeting and unreachable. However, the moment he came back to his senses, plants and flowers bloomed everywhere on his origin star. Xia Xiaochan, who was cultivating in seclusion, the lava giants who had been in the area of Han Fei's origin star where the flow of time had slowed down by half, and everyone on the thick surface of his origin star seemed to have noticed something wrong. The lava giant's settlement. Someone exclaimed, "Elder, the internal injuries in my body are all healed." "But Elder, why do you suddenly look much younger?" The lava giant races Elder, this is the human emperor's origin star. Perhaps he has obtained some kind of treasure that contains vitality? On the ground outside the origin star, the human race that Han Fei created was already at its peak. Some people with incomplete spiritual heritage had their spiritual heritage restored, and some who were sick and dying and unable to recover felt that there was a power healing their injuries for some reason. So, on the altars, countless people were singing and kneeling on the ground, thanking the gods for their blessing. Xia Xiaochan was unrestricted in Han Fei's origin star. Walking among the endless flowers, she saw that Han Fei exuded an inexplicable attraction of life. Little black and little white circled around him. Even the emperor sparrow unfolded his wings and soared into the sky. Huff! Han Fei let out a long breath. The moment he opened his eyes, he saw that Xia Xiaochan was looking at him with her rosy cheeks and watery eyes. Aren't you cultivating in seclusion? Why are you here?" Immediately, Han Fei felt the change in his origin star and couldn't help but sigh. Is this the law of life? Xia Xiaochan, on the other hand, put her arms around Han Fei's neck and said softly, "Why don't we have another baby?" Han Fei laughed. "You speak as if our first child has been born." Xia Xiaochan clung to Han Fei's ear and said seductively, "I don't care. I haven't fused with my other self yet anyway, Han Fei turned around and pounced down. "You're provoking me. It seems that I have to teach you a lesson today." In the endless sea of flowers, some indescribable sound continued day after day. Finally, when everything returned to calm, the two of them languidly hugged each other in the grass and watched the stars. The starry river was quiet as they fell asleep. This might be one of the few times they had fallen asleep naturally since they were young. Half a year later. More than 200 years had passed in Han Fei's origin star. Xia Xiaochan had finished the wine given by fifth senior brother and officially stepped into the immortal level more than 10 years ago. Chaotic ice domain. Xia Xiaochan looked at herself in the coffin and took a deep breath. "I'm going to start the fusion." Han Fei nodded. "Okay, I'll guard you from the side." Xia Xiaochan's reincarnation body trembled, her soul scattered in the world. And her body turned into infinite power that surged into the coffin. In order to protect the child in Xia Xiachuan's stomach, the reincarnation body had to return to the original body. In this process of fusion, not only did Xia Xiachuan's original body need to undergo a qualitative transformation, but the child in her stomach would also absorb the power from its mother and undergo a transformation. In the coffin, Xia Xiachuan's flesh and bones were transforming crazily, and the power that her reincarnation body carried was quickly consumed. 1 day. 2 days. 3 days passed. After a full 7 days, fifth senior brother suddenly said, "Little junior brother, resources." Han Fei didn't dare to be negligent. He immediately took out a huge amount of resources and 1,000,000 spiritual fruits. At the same time as he issued an order in his heart, infinite vitality in the world crazily poured into Xia Xiachuan's body. Huh. Fifth senior brother suddenly looked at Han Fei. This level of vitality, this form of vitality. Little junior brother, have you comprehended your original law? Han Fei said, I haven't fully grasped it yet. Fifth senior brother said with interest, interesting, the law of life. This is the first time I've seen such a level of law of life. Little junior brother, I have now started having expectations of you. Han Fei rolled his eyes. Senior brother, can you not interrupt me at such a critical moment? Fifth senior brother snorted. Take out a drop of your essence blood. Otherwise, your previous bloodline is not enough to support the child's potential growth. Han Fei immediately injected his natal blood into Xia Xiachuan's body. Fifth senior brother said, all right, the growth of her original body is already very fast, but it can't be too fast. This requires a transition. About 300 years. There's a high probability that she can revive in no more than this period of time. 300 years? Han Fei looked at fifth senior brother in shock. The latter said, do you think it's very slow to fuse a C-establisher body with a reincarnation body and become an immortal in 300 years? Not slow, not slow. Han Fei realized that it did make sense. Xia Xiachuan's situation was special. 300 years wasn't a long time. Anyway, it would only take more than half a year in his origin star. Fifth senior brother asked, are you going to stay here? Han Fei thought for a moment and then looked at the chaotic ice wall. I'll go kill the ominous. Upon hearing that Han Fei was going to kill the ominous, words immediately appeared on the distanceless gate. Okay. You have to keep your word. You have to kill 100,000. Han Fei laughed. Don't worry. It'll only be more, not less. After putting Xia Xiachuan back into his origin star, Han Fei went to the ominous guardian place outside the chaotic ice domain for the first time. Here, he found a darkness blocked by the ice domain, surrounded by countless ominous creatures. It gave Han Fei the feeling that they were bees. Countless bees surrounded the beehive and attacked whenever an outsider came. When Han Fei arrived here, more than a dozen destruction-level ominous creatures swarmed over. Han Fei even saw 2 or 3 humanoid ominous creatures, but they didn't attack immediately. Swish. 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 Han Fei strolled in the vast river of stars, and all the 8 small vines of the demon purification pot shot out, piercing through a group of ominous creatures in an instant. And the ominous creatures were like moths to a flame, never stopping. The suicide charge was extremely crazy. When more than 52,000 ominous creatures died under the small vines of the demon purification pot, Han Fei finally felt that the demon purification pot couldn't absorb anymore. Obviously, 52,000 ominous creatures was the demon purification pot's limit. This number of kills seemed terrifying, but in fact, only a small portion was destroyed. At the moment when the demon purification pot couldn't absorb it anymore, the 3 humanoid ominous creatures suddenly moved. Yes, they were waiting. They didn't take action until the demon purification pot couldn't kill the ominous creature anymore. Oh, world-ending level ominous creatures? A world-ending level ominous creature was equivalent to a great monarch. When he was in the hidden monarch city, Han Fei had seen world-ending level ominous war beasts and world-ending level ominous creatures. This time, these 3 were exactly world-ending level ominous creatures. Han Fei didn't avoid the battle. He might not have been able to defeat a great monarch in the sea realm with his current strength. However, ominous life forms had special characteristics. Han Fei jumped back and distanced himself from the ordinary ominous creatures. These 3 world-ending level ominous creatures thought that Han Fei was going to retreat and sped up to chase him. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly, and he suddenly stopped. As he clenched his hand, glowing magical chains swarmed over from all directions. Each of them contained the power of purification. Ominous creatures hated the power of purification the most, so when such a large number of chains of laws rolled over, their instinctive reaction was to retreat. However, then they seemed to realize that the person in front of them was only at the immortal level and the demon purification pot had lost its effect. This was the best opportunity to kill him. How could they retreat? Therefore, the 3 world-ending level ominous creatures roared, calling other ominous creatures to hurry up. As for themselves, they released boundless black fog, trying to resist these chains of laws and kill Han Fei. Having completely mastered the law of life, Han Fei found it difficult to judge how strong he was now. He stopped retreating and said, "Purify." In millions of voids of this world, the purifying power hidden in the world suddenly bloomed. Large swaths of black fog sizzled and dissipated crazily. Roar. The 3 world-ending level ominous creatures roared angrily, but the power of purification hadn't hurt them yet, so they were still charging at Han Fei. There was a faint smile on Han Fei's lips. Although it wasn't obvious, he sensed life from this ominous creature. Deprive. As soon as Han Fei spoke, all the laws of life in this world seemed to be dissipating. And these 3 world-ending level ominous creatures had completely severed their connection with their river of life. This meant that, as long as they died once, they would never have a chance to be reborn. This was the power of the law of life. Great monarchs and even gods were difficult to kill, because they had incomparably powerful vitality. They could constantly revive with endless resources, and couldn't be killed no matter how hard you tried. However, once their connection with the river of life was cut off, it meant that as long as they died once, they would really die. Swish. 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 The chains of law covered the sky and the earth. The 3 world-ending level ominous creatures didn't realize that the river of life had been separated from them and were still charging at Han Fei. However, ominous creatures were still ominous creatures. This place was full of the power of purification, and they were still injured in the end. Pooh. 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 2 world-ending level ominous creatures were pierced by the chains of law and had their way blocked. The other one was about to reach Han Fei when the small vine suddenly activated and pierced through him with a swish. This ominous creature didn't care at first, but the moment he was pierced, he was a little stunned because he found that he was really dissipating. The ominous power couldn't be recombined at all. It wasn't that there was a problem with the ominous power, but that there was no life power to support him to revive. Han Fei waved his hand gently, and the light dispersed the ominous. This world-ending level ominous creature was cleansed so easily as if it had never existed. As for the other two world-ending level ominous creatures, they were pierced by the chains of laws and couldn't escape for a moment. They could only barely resist. Han Fei strolled across the sky and came to the two world-ending level ominous creatures in the blink of an eye. He gently held a law chain with his fingers and said indifferently, "Life. Extraction." Buzz. A large amount of vitality flowed out of the bodies of the two world-ending level ominous creatures. This was not the kind of flow of 100 or 1,000 years, but the loss of life foundation. Without the connection with the river of life, their bodies were like containers, and the life power they could store was limited. Han Fei just extracted the life power casually, and in the blink of an eye, the life power in their bodies was drained. Without the enhancement of life power, the world-ending level ominous creature was nothing but a ball of ominous power. The law chains burst out with a purifying brilliance and dispersed them in the blink of an eye. Oh. It seems that the existence of ominous creatures is also based on the long river of life, no different from the myriad races. This means that they still belong to the category of creatures in the sea of stars. Han Fei didn't feel smug because he had killed 3 world-ending level ominous creatures, because this was a law suppression. If it were a great monarch of the sea realm, even if he could deprive the river of life here, he wouldn't be able to control the other party. After all, the other party only needed to escape the range of this place. Furthermore, the purification law divine chain was useless to ordinary monarchs, so he could only use the law to fight the ominous now. Of course, the main function of the law of life was not to fight, but equaled a super-strengthened version of the heaven enlightenment divine technique. He no longer needed to consume his lifespan to release the healing divine light. Furthermore, the healing effect was much stronger than the heaven enlightenment divine technique. Even if his body was pierced, he could recover in the blink of an eye. This was the power of the life law of origin. Now that he had already grasped the law of life, there was only the law of death left. There was only one drop of the dew of origin, so it couldn't allow him to grasp a second original law. Therefore, he could only go to the immortal temple. However, Han Fei felt that even if he really reached the immortal temple and mastered the law of death, he probably wouldn't be able to master the law of death to a level comparable to the law of life. After all, the life law of origin contained all branches of the law of life. And it was difficult to master the law of death to this extent. However, he couldn't stop trying to master it just because he couldn't easily master it completely. It was necessary to master both laws. Half a year later, Han Fei went to the Sea of Stars 3 times and killed a total of 150,000 ominous creatures, which made the distanceless gate very happy. This person was indeed very strong. The original city of origin and the 10,000 scale race combined couldn't kill as many as Han Fei in half a year. However, when Han Fei went for the 4th time, he found that the ominous and shrouded areas were gone. They seemed to have retreated. After asking 5th senior brother, the latter said, "The high-level ominous creatures are intelligent." They found that the ominous creatures below the Doomsday level can no longer deal with you, so they chose to retreat for the time being. After all, the ominous creatures are not fools. There's no need to keep sending their lives to you. Hanfei was helpless. He didn't expect to repulse the ominous creature so easily. Fifth senior brother seemed to understand Hanfei's thoughts and couldn't help but say, little junior brother, don't think that the ominous retreated because they were afraid. It's just that they are restricted in the chaotic ice domain. Otherwise, with your killing method, they would have already gathered their army and released doomsday-level ominous creatures. Huh? Why are they restricted here? Fifth senior brother said with a smile, because the ominous hasn't fully returned. Furthermore, in the depths of the Sea of Stars, there are countless people resisting. The chaotic ice domain is just a battlefield in the rear. The existence of the ominous creatures here is just to test the situation. Here. Only when the ominous discovers that there are no strong masters guarding this place and there is a possibility of breaking through will a big battle break out here. Otherwise, under normal circumstances, a big battle won't break out in the chaotic ice domain. Hanfei raised his eyebrows. So, the chaotic fire domain and the chaotic lightning domain are also the same? Of course. Fifth senior brother said lazily, so, guarding here is actually quite boring. Hanfei asked, does the wars breaking out in the Sea of Stars refer to the front line? I went to the front line once when I was in the Hidden Monarch city. The battle there seems to be quite fierce. Fifth senior brother said, that's just a certain line of defense in the rear. There are dozens of such lines of defense in the rear. Hiss. He couldn't help but be shocked. He seemed to have underestimated the intruding ominous. On this day, Hanfei was eating barbecue and exploring the magical effects of laws with fifth senior brother. It turned out that fifth senior brother's understanding of laws far exceeded his own. The laws he grasped also far exceeded his imagination. Fifth senior brother knew every idea he proposed and could also derive many magical effects of laws. Suddenly, Hanfei sensed the fluctuations of Xia Xiaochan's life. In addition to Xia Xiaochan, he also sensed another young life fluctuation. Buzz. Hanfei threw away the barbecue in his hand and summoned the tree coffin. Xia. Xiaochan frowned slightly and seemed to be about to wake up. Hanfei didn't intend to keep it a secret that Xia Xiaochan could pass 300 years in half a year, and fifth senior brother was not surprised at all. Since fifth senior brother was so knowledgeable that he even knew about the dew of origin, it was almost certain that he knew that the demon purification pot could accelerate time. In fact, if it weren't for the fear of insufficient resources, Hanfei would have continued to strengthen the time chain in his origin star. After all, after the battle in the Godfiend Sea, he had consumed a lot of resources. Not only had he left half of the resources for the human race, but also the food for Little Black and Little White, the food for the Emperor Sparrow, the need for his advancement, the compression of his origin star core, and the cultivation needs of the billion human beings on the periphery of his origin star. All of this was like a big mouth swallowing the resources in his body. In the battle in the South Sea Divine Realm, although many great monarchs died, he didn't obtain the resources in their origin stars. This time, Xia Xiaochan's recovery and the birth of his child also consumed a lot of resources. Therefore, Hanfei finally started becoming frugal again. At this moment, Hanfei asked nervously, fifth senior brother, why don't I See Xia Xiaochan's belly bulging? The fifth senior brother said, she's a monarch after all. It's not surprising that she has an entire world in her body. Otherwise, do you think that within such a small space, it would be enough for a divine child to draw energy and be born? Han Fei opened his mouth, thinking that he was inexperienced. Han Fei asked, fifth senior brother, do you think my child is someone's reincarnation? Fifth senior brother said, with me here, who can silently reincarnate here? Don't worry. Unless someone is as capable as eldest senior brother, it's impossible to hide it from my eyes. Han Fei nodded slightly. That was good. After all, eldest senior brother helped Xia Xiaochan steal the miracle fruit first. It was inevitable for him to have such thoughts. Suddenly, Han Fei sensed an inexplicable affinity. It was a bloodline connection, inexplicably intimate. Buzz. Xia Xiaochan's body was shining with golden light. She slowly opened her eyes and looked much more haggard. Han Fei waved his hand and boundless vitality enveloped Xia Xiaochan. Only then did she look better. A mass of golden light slowly emerged from Xia Xiaochan's body. The moment this golden light appeared, the sky above the chaotic ice domain was enshrouded in colorful rays of light. Han Fei saw dancing dragons and phoenixes, roaring exotic beasts, phantoms of divine trees, and flowing water. Even the sky emitted faint immortal sounds. Fifth senior brother clicked his tongue. It's really not easy for this little guy to persist until now. The heavenly blessing is magnificent. Such talent can only be described as terrifying. Han Fei grinned from ear to ear, his palms sweating. Suddenly, a voice came from the void. Brother. Huh, Einer? Han Fei looked back blankly and saw Einer flying over. Han Guanchu and Jiang Linxian stepped in the air and arrived leisurely with a smile. Fifth senior brother slightly cupped his hands. Congratulations, fellow Taoists. Are you satisfied with your grandchild? Han Guanchu returned the salute with a smile. Haha, shared joy. Of course I'm satisfied. Brother Zhang, I have a pot of fine wine here. Would you like to drink it? Oh? Then let's have a drink together. Wait a moment, I'll make 2 dishes. Fifth senior brother grinned from ear to ear. How could the wine brought by Han Guanchu be ordinary? He was afraid that Han Fei wouldn't be in the mood to cook, so he decided to cook by himself. Jiang Linxian put on a faint smile. Fair, don't panic. The divine embryo has just appeared and hasn't been baptized by the heavens and earth. You still have to wait. Han Fei asked, Mom, why are you here all of a sudden? You came just at the right time. Jiang Linxian smiled. How can your father and I miss such a day? However, the astronomical phenomenon doesn't seem to be enough. Not enough? Jiang Linxian waved her hand, and a purple mist rushed to the divine fetus. Boom! Rumbling sounds burst out between the heavens and the earth. Mystic birds danced, lightning composed, wind and rain danced, and laws descended. Han Einer pulled Han Fei's arm hard, obviously very nervous. She finally had another family in this world. Han Fei, Einer has already proved Tao? So fast. Einer said, Brother, you're already an immortal. Han Fei thought to himself, my path to the immortal level is full of obstacles. These two have never appeared by my side. Han Fei glanced at Jiang Linxian. Mom, did you kill those 2 gods? Jiang Linxian smiled. I didn't do anything. Han Fei suddenly looked at old Han, who was showing off a wine calabash too. Fifth senior brother, not far away. He narrowed his eyes slightly. So it's old Han. Han Guangqiu smiled at Han Fei. Son, would you like a drink? Han Fei said, you can drink it yourself. Although Han Fei looked calm, he was quite shocked in his heart. He had thought about it. If it wasn't the Void Temple, who did it? The demon god. Definitely wouldn't help him do this. Even if he attacked, he couldn't instantly kill two gods. He wasn't familiar with the others, but old Han and his mother were elusive. It was difficult to tell what their real strength was. He had once thought of a question. Old Han and his mother were gods in their 9 lives. Then where were their divine bodies in their previous lives? Would gods definitely abandon their bodies when they reincarnated? How many gods were buried in the graveyard of gods? Their bodies had been there since ancient times. How could the bodies of old Han and his mother in their previous lives disappear? Now, old Han had killed 2 gods with a flip of his hand. Old Han was even stronger than he imagined before. Han Fei didn't ask further. He was too lazy to think about old Han and his mother's plan. In this place, the glow gradually disappeared into the divine embryo. Hiya! Suddenly, the cry of a baby resounded. The golden light gradually turned into a set of immortal clothes and dimmed. A cute baby cried in midair, rubbed her eyes, glanced at Han Fei, and then looked at Xia Xiaochan, who had opened her eyes. Han Guangqiu saw it from afar and laughed. A granddaughter is great too. Finally, the little guy chose to abandon Han Fei and crawl towards Xia Xiaochan in the void. Mama. Xia Xiaochan hugged the little baby, flew out of the coffin, and then landed on the ground. The little guy rubbed against Xia Xiaochan, struggled out of Xia Xiaochan's hand, climbed to Xia Xiaochan's shoulder, and then circled Xia Xiaochan's head. Before Xia Xiaochan reached out to grab her, she flashed and appeared directly above Han Fei's head. Daddy. Han Fei was stunned. This was real teleportation. The little guy was born with the mastery of the great Tao of space. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan were both stunned. Isn't this baby too smart? Xia Xiaochan was dumbfounded. Is she already a venerable? She doesn't have to transcend a heavenly tribulation? Jiang Linxian smiled. The heavenly tribulation turned into a gift from the heavenly Tao and disappeared. It's not unheard of for an innate divine embryo to become a venerable from birth. In the chaotic era and the primordial era, there were many such cases. However, most of them didn't have as many astronomical phenomena as this little girl. Xia Xiaochan finally noticed Jiang Linxian. She had seen Han Guangqiu, but never Jiang Linxian. As if thinking of something, Xia Xiaochan looked at Han Fei in a panic, and Han Fei smiled. This is our mother. Xia Xiaochan glared at Han Fei, then slightly bowed to Jiang Linxian, and said in a very low voice, Mom. Jiang Linxian couldn't hide the smile on her face. She said gently, alas. His father gave me a nature divine bracelet that can cleanse the mind and hide my aura. I'll give it to you now. Xia Xiaochan blushed and was about to decline, when Han Fei said, take it. Our mother is very rich anyway. It would be a waste if you don't take it. Han Fei was carrying the little girl down from his head. However, the little girl's figure dispersed into a shadow. This time, she appeared directly in Han Guanxu's hand and extended her little hand to grab the wine calabash. Han Guanxu chuckled. Little kids can't drink. Come, Grandpa has a jar of nectar here. Have a taste. With that, Han Guanxu raised his hand, and a small purple bottle appeared in his palm. The little girl hugged the purple bottle, cutely bit off the stopper with her mouth, and then lay flat in midair, pouring the nectar from the small bottle into her mouth. Han Einer suddenly said, "Brother, she looks a bit like you when she eats." Resources. Han Fei couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Nonsense, that's impossible. Einer giggled. So, what's my niece's name? While Han Fei was thinking, Xia Xiaochan suddenly said, Han Chani, Han Chani. Hiya. The little guy who was drinking the nectar called out, seeming to approve of the name. Huh? Han Fei couldn't help but look at Xia Xiaochan, and Xia Xiaochan said, "Without Chani, there wouldn't have been her and me. So just call her Chani. Okay?" Han Fei's heart did a flip. It seemed that after Xia Xiaochan completely fused with her reincarnation body, Yi Chani, she didn't completely forget that part of memory. Han Fei nodded slightly. Okay. Let's call her Han Chani. Han Einer said, Come to me. Auntie has something fun for you to play with. After a few moments, the cube was restored, leaving Han Einer dumbfounded. When she played the cube back then, she was puzzled. She felt that her intelligence seemed to have suffered a blow. However, the baby seemed to sense Han Einer's depression. She flew to Han Einer's side and handed the nectar to Han Einer's mouth with her chubby little hands. Ha ha ha. This action made everyone laugh. One day passed. In the chaotic ice domain, Yi was sleeping soundly in Xia Xiaochan's arms. Under the effect of the nectar, the little girl had slept for a day, and from time to time, Dao runes spread out of her body. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan were saying goodbye to old Han, Jiang Linxian, and Han Einer. This was because Jiang Linxian said that it was time to take Einer to the Sea of Stars. In the Sea realm, Han Fei would have to depend on himself on everything. Han Fei had heard this countless times. Old Han said this every time, but in the end, no matter what happened, this guy would always be found. Therefore, Han Fei was already immune to such parting words. They could go wherever they wanted. Anyway, existences who could kill gods could do whatever they wanted in this vast starry sky. Han Einer said, "Brother, we'll come back to see you." Han Fei said, "Ha, you can go in peace. I'll visit you in the Sea of Stars someday." Han Guanxu said leisurely, "Son, just follow your feelings on the path of cultivation. Your mother and I won't give you any advice. No matter which path you think is feasible, just keep walking." The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched. "I won't suddenly discover your trace again, will I?" Han Guanxu chuckled. "I won't interfere in your life anymore." Han Fei didn't believe him at all. Jiang Linxian looked at Han Fei gently and said, "Feier, one day, even if you break through the limit of the supreme divine technique, don't rush to become a god. A real strong master never cares about the god realm." Old Han and the others left again. There was no telling if they were really leaving or not. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan certainly couldn't stay in the chaotic ice domain anymore. Han Fei said, "Fifth senior brother, I'm leaving." Fifth senior brother smiled and waved his hand. "Go. By the way, let me remind you that some things in life have to be put down. Sometimes, when you put down Something, you may get it. Han Fei paused and nodded slightly. Then, Han Fei looked at the chaotic ice wall and said, "Old distanceless, can you give us a ride?" Han Fei's ability to kill the ominous had already been fully recognized by the distanceless gate. He directly repulsed the ominous, which made the distanceless gate very happy. However, in the end, the distanceless gate was still the distanceless gate and wouldn't become a tool for private use, at least not yet, so a line of words quickly appeared on it. "How about 50,000 ominous creatures at a time?" Han Fei. Seeing Han Fei fall silent, another sentence quickly appeared on the gate. 30,000 is fine too. Deal. Han Fei was not speechless because he had to kill tens of thousands of ominous creatures, but because he was wondering how the distanceless gates were made. Despite having unparalleled abilities, they strictly disciplined themselves. And others. They seemed to exist only for the sake of destroying the ominous. Han Fei smiled and said, "From now on, every time I call you, I will kill 30,000 ominous creatures. However, let's forget it this time." "Okay." The distanceless gate seemed to know Han Fei's temper and stopped bargaining with him. It probably thought that this one person was equivalent to 2 races, which was not bad. In the infinite mining area. Free City. It had only been a few years since the human race built the Free City, but it had directly transformed the ecological layout here. Now, the entire Free City was full of spiritual plants. However, not every one of these plants came from the all-about demon plants shops. The 8 camps outside the infinite mining area also provided a tremendous number of plant seeds. The human race was hospitable and friendly. When there was no war, they directly entered a high-level development process. Thug Academy. The admission requirements were so harsh that many people were intimidated. Only the top heavenly talents could be admitted. Old Bai and Old Jiang had retired and become the honorary presidents of the Thug Academy. They established a plantation and cave abodes in the back mountain. Of course, their cultivation was not boring. Every now and then, various people would rush into their cultivation ground. For example, at this moment, Zhang Panpan slipped in with a few companions of her team. A young man said, "Panpan, will we really not disturb the old president's cultivation?" A young girl, exuding a handsome temperament, with a mischievous sparkle in her eyes, was none other than Zhang Xuanyu's daughter, Zhang Panpan. She snorted. "Of course not. Grandpa Jiang must be making delicious food. I can smell it." The other woman said, "Panpan, I heard that President Jiang is very good at arrays. Can we really slip over?" Zhang Panpan bowed and said in a low voice, "Don't worry. I've inherited Uncle Human Emperor's true skills. I've cracked old Jiang's array techniques more than 800 times. Don't use voice transmission. Although I've cast a concealment technique on you guys, in the eyes of the strong, voice transmission is no different from talking loudly. Besides, old men like to eavesdrop. It's a bad habit passed down from ancient times." They moved stealthily along the way. Some turned into flowing water, some shuttled through the grass and leaves of the plantation, and some turned into a little bug, flying among the spiritual plants. Zhang Panpan used many array techniques along the way and quietly erased hundreds of arrays and seals along the way. Finally, they passed through a plantation and came to the foot of a mountain. Zhang Panpan was overjoyed. "We arrived. Let's hurry up while seeing your Uncle Chu. And the others are recruiting." The others were also excited. At this moment, they saw intertwined knife beams. On a mountain. Someone was shocked. Is this the knife beam left behind by Master Human? Emperor? Zhang Panpan said proudly, of course, Uncle Human Emperor didn't just leave behind a knife light. Hurry up. Don't think about comprehending knife intent. What you need to comprehend is the realm of the intent. After a while, in the back mountain of the Thug Academy, knife lights bloomed. And there was a constant roar. Including Zhang Panpan, the 5 of them were carried to the small square of the plantation by Old Bai to stand as punishment. Humph. Old Bai put his finger on Zhang Panpan's forehead. You're simply lawless. Is this knife light something you can comprehend now? It's the lingering rune left by Han Fei when he fought a fierce battle with someone in the infinite mining area. At that time, Han Fei was close to the monarch realm. Fortunately, I set up the ultimate seal, or you wouldn't have been killed. Zhang Panpan pouted. I saw Junior Uncle Chu often go in. Of course. What is Chu Jinnan's current strength? And what is yours? You haven't even entered the sea establishment realm, yet you dare to go anywhere. You're really troublesome. Not far away, old Jiang, who was cooking in the open-air study, shook his head. Slightly. Okay, although she is a little too bold, she is kind of capable. Being able to lead so many people to pass through so many layers of seals. Your squad is not bad either. Stay for lunch. Yay. Zhang Panpan immediately jumped up and wanted to run to the open-air kitchen. But in the next moment, she was pressed to the spot by Old Bai. Stand until it's time for dinner. Zhang Panpan pouted again, and the other 4 all rolled their eyes. They knew that Zhang Panpan was going to suffer a setback, so they simply didn't move. Swish. Suddenly, a void door appeared here. Old Bai and Old Jiang were shocked. Old Bai stood in front of Zhang Panpan and the others in an instant, and Old Jiang activated all the seals in the plantation in an instant. In the front yard of the Thug Academy, Chu Jinnan and the others who were supervising the admission suddenly changed their expression. After a while, Chu Jinnan said calmly, don't worry. If anything happens, they'll start fighting before we sense it. Buzz. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan walked out of the door, with Yi sleeping soundly in Xia Xiaochan's arms. Well. Old Bai widened his eyes and was about to scold Han Fei for coming back without telling him. However, before he said anything, he was shocked by Xia Xiaochan who came out from behind. What surprised him even more was that Xia Xiaochan was holding a child in her arms. Well. Old Bai couldn't believe it. Xiaochan, is it really you? Xia Xiaochan grinned. Grandpa President, long time no see. Old Bai put on a rare brilliant smile. I haven't seen you for a long time. You have already had a baby? Han Fei smiled and said, the process was a little tortuous, but the final result was good. Old Bai and Old Jiang naturally knew what happened to Xia Xiaochan. Every time they thought of her, they couldn't help but sigh and say that Xia Xiaochan's life was full of misfortunes. Seeing Xia Xiaochan return, even Old Bai couldn't help but sigh. Of course. His eyes fell on Yi from time to time. Han Fei said, President, my daughter, Chani. Good, good. What a good name. While Old Bai was sighing, a big head came close. Old Bai immediately glared at him. Zhang Panpan, who allowed you to move? Continue to stand as punishment. Xia Xiaochan turned her head and looked at Zhang Panpan. She couldn't help but chuckle. With your handsome and unbelievably beautiful face, you must be Zhang Xuanyu's daughter, right? Zhang Panpan nodded quickly and asked tentatively, are you Aunt Xiaochan? Xiao Xiaochan couldn't help but laugh. Yes. Good eyesight. Nice to meet you. Old Bai quickly interjected, you don't have to give her anything. You can't give her anything. This girl doesn't lack treasures. I've confiscated all her treasures. Even if you give treasures to her, it will be in vain. Zhang Panpan stomped her feet. Old man, why are you like this? The four people behind Zhang Panpan all looked at Han Fei with admiration in their eyes. They were all excited. Zhang Panpan looked at in Xia Xiaochan's arms, curiously, and said, Uncle Human Emperor, are you going to put baby Chani in the Thug Academy? Han Fei was a little surprised. He didn't expect this little girl to be able to guess this. However, it did make sense. Zhang Xuanyu came back once a few years ago, and probably left after staying for a few days. Zhang Panpan probably felt the same way. Even Old Bai sighed slightly. When he saw the child, he knew what Han Fei and Xiao Xiaochan were thinking. Although the human race was recovering and growing quickly, they didn't have an absolute strong master. Of course, they knew that Han Fei was very strong, but no matter how strong he was not a great monarch yet. However, in the Central Sea Divine Realm, there were a lot of great monarchs. Therefore, they knew the heavy burden on Han Fei's shoulders. He couldn't stop. He had to become stronger. It could be said that the current human race was protected by Han Fei alone. Therefore, even if he had a child, Han Fei couldn't take her with him because it was too dangerous. Han Fei smiled and said, Panpan, you have to take care of your sister in the future. Zhang Panpan nodded quickly. I will. I will take good care of my sister. No one can bully baby Chani. Xiao Xiaochan reached out and touched Zhang Panpan's head. Panpan, thank you. Zhang Panpan immediately raised her head. Aunt Xiaochan, it's my duty. Well, have you seen my father? Han Fei smiled and said, your father's strength has improved greatly, and he has already stepped into the carefree level. At this moment, he might have already gone to the West Wilderness. Don't worry. Your uncle Lu Renquan is also in the West Wilderness. Nothing will happen if the two of them stay together. Besides, I'm going to the West Wilderness too. When Zhang Panpan heard that Zhang Xuanyu was fine and had even advanced to the carefree level, while she was happy, she missed him very much. But then she changed the topic and said, Uncle Human Emperor, did my father cheat on my mother and have illegitimate children with B** cheese? Giggle. Xiao Xiaochan chuckled. Don't worry. Even if your father wants to, he doesn't have the time. That's good. Han Fei shook his head slightly. Like mother, like daughter. With her personality, no one would believe that she wasn't Yi Shiyan's biological daughter. Yi Xinyan, who had rushed back, hurriedly called out, Panpan, don't pester my eldest senior brother. After that, Yi Shiyan and the others arrived. Yi Shiyan said, eldest senior brother, why hasn't my husband returned again? Han Fei said, I'll bring him back next time. Okay, since you're all here, let's have something good. Well, Panpan, take your partners. With that, Han Fei waved his hand and threw an immortal-level ancient demon tiger to the ground. Han Fei made a seal with one hand and directly sealed the ferocious tigers. suppressing pressure. Otherwise, Zhang Panpan and the others wouldn't even have a chance to approach. Han Fei said, "Old Jiang, this immortal-level ancient demon is for you to make tiger bone soup." Old Jiang snorted. "How many people can drink it? These brats can't even drink a drop of it. Let's just eat my braised pork." As he talked, Old Jiang dragged the ferocious tiger away and began to set up layers of seals. Warning, Zhang Panpan, you can touch any seal, but not this one. Otherwise, we can't save you. Humph, I'm not stupid. Zhang Panpan counted with her fingers. See Establishment Realm, Sky Opening Realm, Star Transformation Realm, Late Stage Star Transformation Realm, Peak Level, Late Stage Star Transformation Realm, Dao Lock Level, Dao Proving Level, Carefree Level, and Immortal Level. Zhang Panpan and the others couldn't help but secretly click their tongues. How many realms between this dead tiger and them? Even if you let us touch it, we won't. Then, Chu Jingnan and the others returned one after another. Even Han Xian came to freeload. Half a day later, the crowd dispersed. Only Old Jiang, Old Bai, and Han Xian were left. Old Jiang said, "She was born a venerable. Han Fei, are you sure we can raise this little girl?" Xiao Xiaochan said, "Grandpa President, I want Yi to have a relatively complete childhood like us. Therefore, we will seal Yi's power." Han Fei nodded slightly. "President, you've raised Panpan. She is very good. Now it's Yi's turn. Don't favor one over the other." Old Bai blew his beard. "So we're just here to take care of your children?" Han Fei laughed. "Of course not. Isn't my clone here?" As he spoke, Han Fei formed seals, and layers of sealing chains entered Chani's body. Old Bai said disdainfully, "Han Song is also cultivating in seclusion. Isn't it us who will take care of your baby in the end? In my opinion, with your current strength, can't you each leave a clone here?" Han Fei's smile faded slightly. "President, Yi is born extraordinary. We can't create too ordinary a family environment for her. Panpan is following in her father's footsteps. We have to give Yi a goal too. She will grow up, become stronger, and experience hardships like everyone else. Han Song will secretly guide her forward. And it's time for us to walk the path we should walk." Alas. Old Bai sighed. "I know, as the human emperor, you have no choice. Fine, leave Yi to me. Be careful. I don't want Yi to ask me where her parents are after she grows up." Han Fei cupped his hands. "Thank you, President." A layer of mist appeared in Xiao Xiaochan's eyes. She didn't dare to linger. She could only leave quietly while Yi was still sleeping. Her path was not simple either. She had to take back the inheritance left by the god of the Southern Dipper. She would fight with Han Fei in the West Wilderness and the Central Sea Divine Realm together. How could she fight if she was too weak? Reluctantly giving Yi to Old Bai, Han Fei and Xiao Xiaochan disappeared with a swish. After a while, outside the infinite mining area, Xiao Xiaochan was a little depressed. Han Fei gently stroked her shoulder. "I seem to understand old Han. And my mother a little bit." Xiao Xiaochan was silent for a moment. "Help me point out the location of the Merman royal family. After all, she is my mother." Han Fei nodded slightly. When the human race defeated the 10,000 scale race, Xiao Hongzhu and the others seemed to have realized the powerful heritage of the 10,000 scale race and the city of origin and left alone. They seemed to have gone to the city of wanderers first and then left the chaotic wasteland. Over the years, he hadn't asked where they had been or what they had done. The human race and the merman royal family had never been absolute enemies. Therefore, Han Fei actually didn't have any ill feelings towards the merman royal family. Xiao Shaochan said again, you can go to the West Wilderness first. Or find your original law first. After that, I'll go get the inheritance left to me by the god of the Southern Dipper. Han Fei said, although it's an inheritance for you, I'm afraid it won't be that simple to completely grasp it. I know, but I'm already an immortal level powerhouse now. I'll master it as soon as possible and go to the West Wilderness. Last time, I was the only one missing in the Battle of the Thousand-Star City. I don't want to miss the battle in the Central Sea Divine Realm this time. Han Fei nodded. It was good that Xiao Shaochan didn't go to the West Wilderness. For the time being, God knew what other turmoils there would be in the West Wilderness. Of course, it was also possible that the primordial divine race was already prepared and only needed to unseal their bloodline now. If that happened, the turmoil in the West Wilderness might be smaller than he thought. And end faster. Han Fei took out the vast ocean navigator. For the first time, he confirmed that the merman royal family was still in the Eastern Sea Divine Realm. 4. The second time, he confirmed that the merman royal family was among the major factions in the Eastern Sea Divine Realm, near the floating island. For the third time, he confirmed a more accurate location of the merman royal family. Although they were husband and wife, he and Xiao Shaochan had their respective paths, just like Luo Xiaobai, Lu Renquang, and Zhang Xuanyu. Han Fei and Xiao Shaochan finally separated after spending a few years with each other in Han Fei's origin star. After Xiao Shaochan left, Han Fei activated the jade slip to summon the distanceless gate. Swish. The distanceless gate appeared, accompanied by words on it. Where do you want to go? Han Fei said, you lead the way. Let's go to the Sea of Stars to kill a wave of ominous creatures, and then you send me to the Immortal Temple. Okay. One day later. In the Sea of Stars, a door suddenly appeared in a dark mist full of death energy. Han Fei walked out of the distanceless gate, only to feel that his surroundings were filled with boundless death energy. This death energy appeared to be flowing like a surging river of death energy. Han Fei stood still for a moment, and then his body was covered with death energy, which even tried to drill into his body. However, the law of life automatically activated, condensing a law barrier on Han Fei's body and shaking off the death energy in the blink of an eye. With a thought, Han Fei perception permeated into the death energy but was also contaminated by the aura of death. This aura of death would devour the body and soul. Besides, the many laws here were also accompanied by the power of death. If it weren't an undead creature, even if a monarch entered this place, he would probably not be able to survive for long. Han Fei shouted, I'm Han Fei, from the Void Temple. I'm here to visit you. I request an audience with Death God. Yes, the master of the Immortal Temple was not called the master of undead, but the Death God. He had learned this from his eldest senior brother. As a disciple of one of the three temples, it was naturally not a problem for Han Fei to visit the Immortal Temple. Soon, a figure shrouded in a black robe suddenly appeared from the aura of death. Hee hee. So you're a fellow Taoist from the Void Temple. I was wondering who would dare to barge into the immortal temple. However, fellow Taoist Han Fei, although you have a good relationship with the immortal temple, you can't meet Master Death God just because you want to. If Master of the Void comes, Master Death God will personally welcome him. However, when you're here, it's only I who came to welcome you. The people from the immortal temple were all wearing black robes, and their faces couldn't even be seen. Han Fei didn't know who they were. Han Fei asked, "Who are you?" The first Yama, the judge. "Oh? Mr. Judge, how can I meet Senior Death God?" The judge said in a teasing tone, "Under normal circumstances, you won't be able to meet Master Death God. However, Master Death God has already known your intentions and only said one thing." "What is it?" "Only after walking through the 10 directions purgatory can he see me." Han Fei raised his eyebrows slightly. "What if I don't?" The judge thought for a moment and added, "The immortal temple has always been a place for the dead. The 10 directions purgatory is a place to test the potential of the undead. You're a living person. Even if you walk through the 10 directions purgatory, it'll be pointless. Therefore, I don't recommend you take this suffering." The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. "How can a mere purgatory shake my Tao heart?" "Mr. Judge, lead the way." "Kiki." The judge chuckled. "You chose the path yourself. If you walk it, you might not be able to return." Han Fei said fearlessly, "That's my own choice." The judge nodded slightly and turned to rush through the river of death energy. Han Fei stood on the creation divine chain and followed behind him unhurriedly. After a while, Han Fei saw a mirror standing quietly in the void. This mirror was so high that he couldn't see the end. When he looked at the mirror, it seemed that his soul would be absorbed in. The judge smiled and said, "When you are immersed in the mirror, you step into the 10 directions purgatory. Let me remind you that there are countless creatures taking trials here, so please don't interfere with other people's trials." Han Fei cupped his hands. Sure. Han Fei wasn't worried that the immortal temple would deliberately harm him. Firstly, there was no reason. Secondly, if they did that, they would become enemies with the Void Temple. Therefore, Han Fei looked at the mirror without hesitation. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. In Han Fei's ear, the judge's voice vaguely sounded. "This is a mirror of virtue and justice. What is reflected in it is good and evil in your past. Please ask yourself." Buzz. In Han Fei's eyes, he suddenly saw countless lakes. Since he was young, from the first time he killed, to the slaughter, to this moment, he seemed to have seen his entire life in an instant. Han Fei saw a road appear in front of his eyes. The scenes of his past were reflected on both sides of the road. Ask myself? Ask what? My Tao heart is firm. I only kill those who deserve to be killed and do what I should. Everything I want is what I need. Break. In front of Han Fei, the countless images that appeared beside the road instantly shattered. It was also at this moment that Han Fei's heart suddenly did a flip. This was because he discovered that all his strength had disappeared. He couldn't sense any power, any specific soul state, or any great Tao or law. At this moment, Han Fei seemed to have become an ordinary person. 3213 Comprehending Life and Death in the 10 Directions Purgatory, 1. Han Fei knew that since he saw his past life, the 10 Directions Purgatory trial had already begun. The first level of purgatory should be the past that he had just seen. Most people would have infinite mixed feelings if they had enough time when they saw this. The memories of the past came back to his mind, accompanied by too much regret, thinking, and endless choices. If he was obsessed with these things, he would definitely be tortured by the subsequent purgatory. Han Fei was not stupid, so he dropped it immediately, this path was immediately much quieter. The judge's voice rang in Han Fei's ears. In this world, the judgments of right and wrong reside within one's own heart. The hellfire may cleanse one's sins, but what remains indelible are the memories of this lifetime. Han Fei said indifferently, there is no absolute right choice, nor is there an absolute wrong choice. Making a decision at the appropriate time is the best choice. What accompanies these choices are merely the costs we bear. Can this ever hinder my Tao heart? The judge didn't speak. Han Fei walked on this road, and the scene in front of him began to change. He saw many people, many races, and countless creatures. When he set foot in this place, he became one of these countless creatures. On Han Fei's left and right sides were extremely high walls. At the end of the line of sight was the end of the wall. At this moment, the two walls were approaching each other. Once the two walls were pressed together, all the creatures between them would be crushed into powder. Around Han Fei, there were swimming fishes, big birds sprinting in the sky. Giants rampaging, sweeping across the people in front of him, and some people crying and running forward. Han Fei was the only one who didn't move. Judging by the speed at which the two walls were closing in, approximately 10% of the beings here are being crushed. However, was that so-called exit truly an exit? He could guarantee that as long as they rushed out of the exit, there would be another checkpoint waiting for them. Most people still couldn't escape the fate of being crushed to death. Han Fei stood still, letting the countless people around him rush past and escape to the exit. He was the only one who didn't move, even though he was only an ordinary person now. Seeing that the two walls were getting closer and closer, there was no one around Han Fei. Most of the creatures had escaped, and a small number of them were still running desperately, although they couldn't escape. The running creatures didn't even have a chance to cry for help, because most people couldn't think of crying for help. At this moment, the two walls were already very close. Han Fei's expression remained unchanged, allowing the walls to squeeze his body and crush his flesh and blood. When he was completely crushed, there was only darkness in front of his eyes. But he didn't even blink. In the next moment, Han Fei's figure appeared in the dark void. He was still an ordinary person, and opposite him was a huge black-robed man. The black-robed man asked, "Why didn't you run?" A faint smile hung on Han Fei's lips. "Why should I run? If I've guessed right, there will be many such small trials or small purgatory. Once I run away, there may be 10 or 20 waiting for me. Perhaps you are using this method to screen talents or observe their temperament, intelligence, and ability. However, I'm here to meet Senior Death God, not to take trials, so this kind of trivial matter is meaningless. In addition, fellow Taoist, you have become so big. It's very inconvenient for us to talk. Hee. Interesting. Human Emperor Han Fei is indeed extraordinary. I am the second Yama, Great Monarch Punisher. This trial has a total of 16 levels of purgatory. There are quite a number of people who can't even take a step in this purgatory. Please enter the next level of purgatory. Hanfei nodded slightly, and the scene around him changed. In front of him was a sea of fire, in which countless voices were wailing. I don't want to reincarnate. I don't want to reincarnate as an undead. Let me go. Let me die. Ah. Why can't I blow myself up? I want to blow myself up. Senior, please grant me death. I would rather my soul dissipate. Roar. Someone was roaring and pounding the ground. Some people were in so much pain that they were attacking others, hoping that this kind of venting could divert their attention. However, Hanfei was already used to this pain after 200 years of hellfire burning. He only frowned slightly. Had the immortal temple mastered the hellfire burning technique? However, he immediately understood. Even the ancient god of Thundernote had mastered the method of hellfire incineration. The death god of the immortal temple couldn't be weaker than the ancient god of Thundernote. It was only natural that he had mastered the method of hellfire incineration. Hanfei didn't complain. This level couldn't be passed by standing still. He saw a mountain in the distance, which was the only mountain here. Most people knew that they had to run to the mountain, but they roared in pain as they ran. Some of them couldn't even move at all. This was because they were better when they weren't moving. It seemed that the pain had decreased a lot. But once they moved, they felt that their bodies and minds were burning. Hanfei, experiencing it with his current mortal body, actually had similar feelings as other beings. He could also feel the torture on his body and soul. He even felt that his legs were incinerated and he couldn't open his eyes at all. However, unlike others, his Tao heart had long been tempered through countless life and death experiences and countless battles. 32:14 Comprehending Life and Death in the 10 Directions Purgatory, 2. Therefore, although he felt that his body was shattering and melting with every step he took, he didn't frown. After walking for a while, Hanfei found that many people struggled in the hellfire. According to what everyone had done, the intensity of the hellfire was different. Although Hanfei's karma had basically been burnt up, this part of the road was not a test for him in the first place, but he walked on it on his own. On the way, Hanfei saw many determined people, including many races that Hanfei had never seen. Looking at the creatures struggling forward, he couldn't help but feel curious. Hanfei walked to a bull-headed giant and said calmly, "What are you holding?" "On 4? The bull-headed man looked at Hanfei with difficulty and growled in his throat, "I don't want to die." This answer was too common. Hanfei wasn't interested and continued to ask along the way. For example, seeing the hawk struggling on the ground because of the heat, Hanfei asked, "What are you holding on for?" The hawk's sharp cry was like a human's roar. Being an undead creature is also a path. I want to continue to become stronger. I want to become strong. Hanfei asked, "What will you do after you become strong?" The hawk flapped its wings. "Revenge." "Oh. Hatred." Hanfei walked forward unhurriedly as if this body was not his at all. Along the way, he asked countless people, but the answers he got were mostly similar. Most of them did it because they didn't want to die. They felt that reincarnated undead creatures were still alive. There were also some people who wanted to continue cultivating because of their faith. Some people didn't want their traces in this world to completely disappear. That would be no different from turning into ashes. There were also a small number of people who fought for righteousness and eliminating the ominous. Everyone seemed to have a reason. This motivation drove them forward. Although the hellfire was burning fiercely, Han Fei hadn't seen anyone being burned to ashes yet. This meant that no matter how hard these people struggled, they would eventually reach the mountain in unparalleled pain and escape the burning of the hellfire. Therefore, although this seemed difficult, most people could still complete it. Han Fei felt that it took him no more than a day to reach the mountain. After arriving here, he saw a precipice, where the techniques of turning into the undead were engraved. It was the way to teach them how to absorb death energy. Furthermore, under this technique, there was a word mark. This can be your destination, but it can also be your starting point. Cross this cliff and you'll probably die. You'll either become an expert or be obliterated. Please choose carefully. The hellfire was no longer burning here, but countless creatures gathered here and began to cultivate to turn into the undead according to the cultivation techniques. Yes, there were many more people left than those who continued to walk. Perhaps only 1 or 2 of the thousands of creatures would try to walk to the 4th level of purgatory. The first level reflects my life and clears your Tao heart. The second level has many small trials to select talents. The third level is the burning of hellfire to cleanse sin. Han Fei discovered that the first 3 levels of purgatory should be just a basic test for the reincarnated undead. Although this basic test seemed difficult, it was just a basic test. Han Fei wasn't here to turn into an undead creature, so he didn't study the cultivation techniques, but continued to move forward. At this time, another black-robed man appeared in front of Han Fei, and his voice carried a bit of majesty. Fellow Taoist Han Fei, every dead person who turns into an undead has their own desires. Although you are not here to turn into an undead, have you ever thought that after you die, you will become an undead? Han Fei asked, who are you? The third Yama, great monarch hellfire herding. Han Fei curled his lips slightly. Herd hellfire? That's appropriate. Han Fei said calmly, that's a good question. Han Fei frowned slightly. All undeads had their own requirements. If he were himself, he might have given up if he died. Although undeads were also living. In certain ways, he felt that this way of living was too boring. If he only lived for himself, Han Fei felt that he might not change to become an undead. However, he didn't just live for himself. He still had a lot of things to do. And hadn't met the people he wanted to see. Would he be willing to give up? Once a person had a bond, he would hesitate, so Han Fei wasn't sure what he would choose. Great monarch hellfire herding said in a low voice, that's an honest answer. But this answer is not enough. Since you don't know how to choose, try it. The 4th, 5th, and 6th levels of purgatory are only trials for the undead. Although they are 100 times more difficult, they can't shake your Tao heart. There's no need for you to go anymore. Go to the 7th level. In front of Han Fei's eyes, the scene changed again. This time, Han Fei seemed to have returned to the heavenly water village. Yes, it was this village. At home, by the cliff, Han Fei was still a 12-year-old boy. However, his memory still existed. A black-robed man stood beside Han Fei at some point in time. He said, I am the 7th Yama, great monarch reincarnation. Of course, it's impossible for me to achieve true reincarnation. I'm just creating a fake world of reincarnation. 32:15 Comprehending Life and Death in the 10 Directions Purgatory, 3. Han Fei, you made me reincarnate with my memories? The black-robed man chuckled. Why do you have to forget your memories? In this life, you are just an ordinary person. The others you know are also ordinary people, but your life is still exciting. With that, the black-robed man left. Han Fei, come and have some soup. Han Fei looked back and saw that it was Tengu. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh when he saw Tengu again. Although in reality, Tengu still lived in the human race and had sons and daughters, and his strength had reached the peak-level late-stage star transformation realm, he was still that boy here. Looking at the spirit swallowing soup, Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. This was where he started. Who knew that one day he would stand at the peak of the sea realm and become a peerless expert? Han Fei knew Tang Ji's aptitude, so he took the soup and asked, how's your cultivation going? Huh? Cultivation? What cultivation? Han Fei frowned slightly. He wanted to feel his spiritual heritage, but at this moment, he was really an ordinary person without any abilities. He took the spirit swallowing soup and found that no data appeared in the soup. Even the demon purification pot didn't give any feedback. It's not a cultivation world? Han Fei said again, Tengu, I remember that the fishing trial will be held in a few days, right? Don't come to me during this period of time. But Tengu looked at Han Fei weirdly. What fishing trial? What are you talking about? Are you talking about the fishing season? There's still half a year to go until the fishing season. When the time comes, let's work harder and try to gain more. Let's treat your illness first. Illness? Sure enough, I'm still sick. Is my spiritual heritage still incomplete? Tengu touched Han Fei's forehead and asked in confusion, you don't have a fever? Why are you talking nonsense? Is it because you're too weak? Han Fei slapped Tengu away speechlessly and thought to himself, fine, this life is interesting. Since I'm here, I'll take it easy. Several days later, Han Fei had a general understanding of this world. This was not a floating island at all, and there were no fishing boats here. However, this was a low-leveled martial world, and people still had a certain space for forced promotion. This village was still the Heavenly Water Village and was a small island on the sea. There were thousands of such small islands. These countless small islands surrounded a very large island called the Thousand-Star City. To Han Fei's surprise, his parents, Old Han, and his mother were all there. Because they were fake figures fabricated by that Yama, they were just ordinary people, not gods. Han Fei quickly accepted this reality. He also wanted to see what kind of reincarnation World Great Monarch Reincarnation had created for him. On the third day after Han Fei came here, during class, he suddenly felt an abnormal pain in his body. This body was only a mortal body, but he could feel this excruciating pain, as if some kind of power was really scraping his bones and blood. Although Han Fei's Tao heart was firm, it was only in terms of mentality and spirit. The more spirited he was, the more painful he would feel. Lying on the ground twitching, Han Fei thought to himself, is this my illness? After all, this is a low-level martial world. If I have no ability at all, how can I experience life as a cripple? At this moment, the people in the class were in a panic. He Xiaoyu shouted. Shut up. I know his illness. Call the teacher. I'll give him a massage to soothe his muscles. Everybody else, get out of the way. Han Fei was in so much pain that he couldn't speak, but in his heart, he thought that He Xiaoyu was quite decisive, although she didn't seem as cute as before. About 5 minutes later, the familiar Mr. Wang Jia came and injected a force into Han Fei's body, which immediately soothed him. When Han Fei stopped twitching, Wang Jia heaved a sigh. Han Fei could hear regret and helplessness in his sigh. Days passed one after another. Han Fei knew that he wouldn't be able to go back until he experienced all of this. He simply began to practice the incomplete monograph on 108 ways of body polishing. Of course, he had a stronger body tempering technique, but his body couldn't withstand it. It took him a full month to barely complete the incomplete monograph on 108 ways of body polishing. However, after it, his episodes went from an average of once every 3 days to once every 7 days. After living here for 3 months, Han Fei's illness was basically cured. In the 3rd month, there was basically no illness. Furthermore, Han Fei's physique began to grow rapidly, and his muscles began to take shape. Half a year later, Han Fei had completely become a normal person, or to be exact, stronger than normal people. His general strength might be equivalent to that of a level 5 fisher. He seemed to be gradually getting used to this life. With his parents and Tanggu by his side, He Xiaoyu often came to him. Probably because she had a crush on him. Wang Jia also began to see him in a different light. Some people who bullied him were punished by him, and the village leader saw his change in talent and praised him for it. This was a very ordinary life, even more ordinary than when he lived in seclusion with Zhou Yingling. It was a little like the life he had when he first met Shiman Linglan. 32:16 Comprehending Life and Death in the 10 Directions Purgatory, 4. On this day, Han Fei was still sleeping soundly in bed. The door suddenly opened, and old Han and Jiang Linxian said, "Son, get up. It's fishing season. We're going to sea." Jiang Linxian said gently, "Haven't you been clamoring about going to sea? Come on, let's go to sea together." Han Fei got up lazily. He was already used to this kind of life. It was more like a vacation than a reincarnation trial. Old Han was a simple fisher. His mother could make beautiful embroidery, so she made more money than old Han did. Tanggu was just an adopted son that old Han picked up by accident, but old Han really treated him as his biological son. Han Fei rose slowly. "Okay, where is Tanggu?" Han Guanshu smiled. "Tanggu is already on the boat." Han Fei stretched. "Aren't we going to have breakfast first?" Jiang Linxian handed out a few skewers with meatballs on them with a smile. "I bought them at the market. They're hot octopus meatballs." Han Fei was stunned for a moment. He was really not used to this kind of mother. The contrast was too great. Han Fei pretended to be happy and took the meatball. "I'll leave half for Tang Gu." Old Han laughed. "Tanggu left these 3 to you. Do you think Tanggu sleeps like a pig like you?" "Fine." After a while, Han Fei came to the fishing port by the sea. This place was already overcrowded with people everywhere who were going to sea to catch fish. Han Fei even saw He Xiaoyu jumping up and saying, Han Fei, let's see who catches more fish." Han Fei said casually with a hint of ridicule, "Then you are bound to lose." Such a small scene actually didn't interest him much, but seeing that everyone was in a good mood, he wasn't in a bad mood. He Xiaoyu even waved her fist at Han Fei angrily. After a while, sails were raised, and small boats ran to the sea one after another. The seemingly dense small boats turned into stars as soon as they entered the sea. They were not close to each other. Wherever a boat stayed, others would bypass it automatically. Old Han began to set up a net. Tang Ge and Han Fei had already started fishing, and Han Fei's mother began to sprinkle the fish food bait. A normal person wouldn't be able to fish in the sea. However, this was a low-level martial world after all. Although they weren't strong, they had some abilities. At first, it took Tang Ge about half a day to catch a total of 3 fish. After all, it was difficult to catch sea fish. With the help of Jiang Linxian, Old Ten caught a total of 12 fish, 2 crayfish, and even a small sea turtle. Han Fei, on the other hand, caught 11 fish on his own, which stunned Tang Ge and Old Han. Tang Ge was stunned. Han Fei, why didn't I know that you were so good at fishing? Old Han also said, hey, son, after you recover, you seem to be very good at everything. His mother said, what are you talking about? Fei was smart in the first place. Clearly, he has mastered some technique. Han Fei chuckled. Actually, different fish are at different depths of water. Get a good grasp of the depth of the water, set up bait, and use a little bit of skill. In this fishing season, it's not difficult to fish. Old Han turned around and laughed. He patted Han Fei's shoulder with his big hand. You speak in such a persuasive manner that I almost believe you. Tang Ge said, let me have a try too. Ah. Just as they were delighted, they suddenly heard their mother scream. They saw a black shadow flash past with a swish. Snap. The black shadow was nailed to the mast. On a closer look, it turned out to be a long conch that looked like a cone. On the conch shell, blood was dripping. The moment he saw the conch, Han Fei's face changed. A nail conch? How is it possible that there are sea demons in this world? Han Fei went to the market more than once. He had checked the entire fish market. There were no sea demons at all, but just ordinary fish. However, the appearance of this nail conch ruined his peaceful life. Mom. Linxian, what's wrong? Jiang Linxian fell backward with a hole in her chest. In panic, Old Han scrambled to help Jiang Linxian up, and Tang Ge crawled over crying. The beautiful picture of life a moment earlier was gone at this moment. Han Fei subconsciously raised his hand and summoned the heaven enlightenment. Divine technique, at least the healing technique. However, this power couldn't be used at all. Half a year was neither long nor short. Although Han Fei knew that this was a fake reincarnation world created by great monarch reincarnation, the people, senses, and experiences here seemed to be real. This was completely different from the environment. This was the reincarnation comprehension created by a certain power. It was just like when he returned to the past and met Shiman Linglan. All of this was so real that even if Han Fei knew that it was fake, he couldn't break free from it. This was really like a reincarnation cycle that had to be completed step by step before the end of this cycle. Han Fei had thought that this was an ordinary world. The meaning of reincarnation might be to let him experience another life and watch the people around him live and die. However, he didn't expect everything to happen so quickly. Humans were animals with feelings. Han Fei had been with the ordinary Jiang Linxian in this world for half a year, and he seemed to be able to remember every detail of the past half a year. However, right in front of him, she was nailed to death by a low-level nail. Conk. He, an immortal-level powerhouse, could only watch his family die in front of his eyes. At this moment, Han Fei had mixed feelings. What he cultivated was not the ultimate affectionless Tao. At this moment, he was angry, indignant, and puzzled about this reincarnation setting. Swish. Clang. Clang. Another nail conch shot out of the sea, and Han Fei slapped it with his fishing rod. Although the fishing rod in his hand was just an ordinary one, Han Fei hadn't forgotten his combat experience. Therefore, although this kind of nail conch whose attack methods were very singular succeeded once, there wouldn't be a second time. Lin Xian. Old Han was not a god this time. Jiang Linxian's body was pierced, and he was helpless. At this moment, tears were streaming down his face as he tried to block the bloody holes on Jiang Linxian's body. But how could such big wounds be blocked? The deck was dyed red and old Han was wailing. Tengu was lying on the deck, dumbfounded. Han Fei looked at the sea and saw a few marching sea leeches. Not good. Han Fei suddenly lifted Tengu up and shouted at him, "Come on, set sail and leave this sea area." Tangji's eyes were full of tears, and he seemed to have no strength at all. Han Fei shouted, "Set sail now, or we'll all die." After that, Han Fei shouted, "Old H. Dad, there's something in the water. We can't stay in this sea area long." However, Han Guanshu seemed to have lost his soul and didn't hear her at all. Han Fei shouted, "Mom has already died. Do you want the two of us to follow her?" Han Guanshu's body trembled. He looked back at Han Fei in confusion. He didn't understand why his biological son was so calm and exuded a strange and awe-inspiring temperament. However, there was a lot of indifference in this temperament. But it was his mother who was dead. "Leave it to me." Although Han Guanshu was reluctant to put Jiang Linxian down, he knew his priorities. With his help, the boat quickly sailed away from this sea area. There were more and more marching sea leeches nearby, and Han Fei and the others found that many boats were fleeing like them. Halfway through, Han Fei saw a long tentacle cutting through the air. In an instant, he slapped the tentacle in the air. Unfortunately, he was only holding an ordinary fishing pole and couldn't inject spiritual energy into it, so he couldn't smash the tentacle at all. Tentacle lobster? The tentacle swung at Han Fei, and his body was only slightly offset, easily avoiding the attack of the tentacle lobster. Seeing that the shrimp's pincers were almost hanging on the boat, Han Fei held the side of the boat with one hand and turned in the air. Except for one hand. He almost threw all the other parts of his body out of the boat. Seeing this scene, Tengu and Han Guanshu felt a chill down their spines. Tengu muttered, Han Fei, son. Don't come over." At that moment, Han Fei kicked the tentacle lobster off the boat with the power of his body. The tentacle lobster smashed into the water, raising several cold glints. Han Fei tilted his head and a knife stabbed into the edge of the hull next to his ear. "Blade fish?" Han Fei's eyes flashed, and he grabbed the knife. The knife of the blade fish was a good weapon, at least when he was a fisher. After a while, a large number of boats gathered at the port of the heavenly water village, and there were screams everywhere. Someone shouted, "Don't go to sea! Don't go to sea! All the fish and shrimp in the sea have become monsters." Someone went crazy. "Dead, they're all dead. My son." Someone shouted, "Run! It's all bugs. The sea is full of bugs. On a boat not far away from Han Fei and the others, a corpse suddenly twitched. Seeing this, Han Fei was about to remind them when he saw a long shadow break out of the body and enter the stomach of another person on the boat. Ah! For a time, there were endless screams. Snake belt. After running for his life, Han Guangqiu seemed to have calmed down a little. He quickly landed the boat, hugged Jiang Linxian, and shouted at Han Fei and Tang Ge, go ashore, quickly go ashore. Han Fei looked back at the boats that were still going back, many of which had already stopped near the shore. He even saw that the tide had begun to surge. Besides, the sky was getting darker and the sea wind began to howl, indicating that a disaster was coming. When Han Fei and the others escaped to the shore, a wave as high as 1 meter had already formed behind them. This wave was actually very small in the seafront area, but this was only the beginning. And the most important thing was not the wave itself. In the wave, hermit crabs were washed up. Those hermit crabs had very fast speed. Taking advantage of the wave to rush to the shore, they began to attack the crowd. In this low-leveled martial world, although everyone had a little strength, they were still far inferior to sea creatures. No one could break the shell of the hermit crab, but its claws could easily knock people down. In addition to hermit crabs, there were also some sea scorpions swarming to the shore. In the blink of an eye, the offshore area was dyed red. Some people were pierced by the scorpion's tail, some were stabbed to death by hermit crabs, and a snake belt was running around but was knocked to death. Someone shouted, "Not good. The tsunami is coming. Run. The village is situated on high ground. Run to the village." Someone cried, "My father was dragged into the sea, right on the shore. Can someone save him? Dad, Mom. Where are you?" Almost in the blink of an eye, everything changed. Han Fei frowned. This didn't seem to be a completely fictional reincarnation world. Everything in this world was too real. People's emotions, the attacks of monsters, and their daily lives were all too normal. Furthermore, every person, every shout, and every voice he saw had their own unique emotions. Han Fei knew that great monarchs had the ability to independently create countless types of characters. However, this didn't seem necessary. Either this world had been woven by great monarch reincarnation for a long time, or this world wasn't actually woven by great monarch reincarnation but had once appeared in the long river of history and now was directly intercepted and used here. Han Fei couldn't help but think of his mother's methods. She used to intercept the fragments of time and made him return to 100,000 years ago. Now, when the familiar creature appeared here, Han Fei knew that this world wasn't as simple as he had imagined. Great monarch reincarnation didn't just let him live as an ordinary person. Han Fei looked at old Han and Tang Ge, thinking that he was no longer a child. Since you want me to live here, I have to live my way. It seems that I have been fighting all my life. Now, I'm just fighting in a different place. Han Fei didn't say this for old Han and Tang Ge to hear. He knew that great monarch reincarnation was watching. No matter what he hoped to comprehend or what he should comprehend, he didn't want to go against his true intentions. If it were when he was young, he would run for his life without hesitation. But now, he wouldn't. Han Fei rushed towards the nearest hermit crab with a knife in one hand. Old Han hurriedly shouted, "Fei, what are you doing? Come back." However, Han Fei didn't seem to hear it at all. The hermit crab thought that Han Fei was just an ordinary person, and he was so small. How could it take him seriously? It didn't dodge at all. It raised its 2 claws and hooked at Han Fei. Pooh! 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 Before it saw how Han Fei attacked, 2 knives flashed and the crab's 2 claws were cut off. When it felt fear and was about to retract into its shell, Han Fei had already stabbed his knife into its forehead. A young man who was almost stabbed to death by a hermit crab looked at Han Fei in shock, but Han Fei had already turned around and left. Someone had a snake belt drill into his body and was staggering, trying to cry for help. The others were all escaping, except for Han Fei, who rushed to his side in 3 or 5 steps. With a cold flash in his hand, he poked his stomach, and a bloody hole appeared, and a long snake flew out. Pfft! With a cold flash, the snake belt was cut in half from head to tail. Han Guanchu, Tang Ge, and some people who were about to escape were all shocked to see Han Fei's action. Han Fei shouted in a childish voice, "Those who can still fight, help the people around you. It's best if you can take the bodies of these sea creatures back. We must retreat within half an hour." Han Fei didn't care if anyone listened to him. He rushed forward and killed more than a dozen sea creatures. Near the shore, because of the congestion of boats, He Xiaoyu dragged 2 bodies with tears on her face. She wanted to take them back, but she was too young and weak to do so. It was already very good that the little girl was not crying on the boat at this moment. However, this couldn't go on. Han Fei had already seen a tentacle lobster crawling towards He Xiaoyu from a boat near her. "Watch out." Han Fei jumped among the boats. His footwork was weird, and he was like a swimming fish. When a tentacle was thrown at He Xiaoyu, a cold light flashed, and a knife swept across the sky more than 10 meters away, cutting off the tentacle and stabbing into the mast next to He Xiaoyu. Han Fei jumped up and came to He Xiaoyu. At the moment when another tentacle was thrown at him, he had already pulled out a knife, grabbed one of the shells of the tentacle lobster with one hand, and turned over in a weird posture. Then he stabbed the knife into the place where the tentacle lobster's head and body met. As the knife chi in his hand shook, the tentacle lobster's brain was shaken into mush. He Xiaoyu was dumbfounded when she saw Han Fei jump over and kill a lobster the size of a human. Han Fei looked at He Mingtang and He Xiaoyu's mother in the pool of blood and heaved a sigh. Without saying anything to He Xiaoyu, he pulled her to jump onto another boat. "My parents are still on the boat. I'm not leaving." Han Fei shouted, "If you don't go, you'll die too. If you die, who will avenge them?" The word avenge seemed to pierce He Xiaoyu's soul. She followed Han Fei numbly. Along the way, a snake belt darted at them. Han Fei slashed back and cut the snake belt into 2 from head to tail, without even looking at it. This scene was witnessed by some observant people, who were astounded. Han Guanchu and Tang Ge had also witnessed Han Fei's strength. They even wondered if this was the Han Fei they knew. Half a day later, the tsunami ravaged the coast of the island for nearly 10 kilometers. God knew how many people had died during this fishing season. At this moment, Han Guanchu, Tang Ge, and He Xiaoyu seemed to be waiting for Han Fei's explanation. They felt that this person seemed a little different from the Han Fei they knew. Han Fei said, "I have a master who is known as the God of Death. He secretly taught me these." Cough, cough. When Han Fei said this, someone in the dark mist in the sea of stars couldn't help but cough a few times. Heh. This kid is interesting. Great Monarch Reincarnation asked, Lord Death God, to be honest, I don't know why you let him enter this reincarnation. Even without the demon purification pot, with Han Fei's strength, how can ancient history of this level stop him? I don't want to stop him. I want to torture his mind and make him experience life and death. Finally, let him experience death. 1 year later. With countless cultivation techniques and skills, Han Fei still walked the path of body refining. Although he didn't have the demon purification pot this time, it didn't matter. This was because he discovered that this low-leveled martial world was gradually changing and already had the conditions for his cultivation. At this moment, the population of the Heavenly Water Village was almost halved. Although the tsunami didn't drown the Heavenly Water Village, it turned it into an isolated island. With the help of old Han, Han Fei promoted cultivation techniques, combat skills, forging, and so on. In the meantime, he was already a level 8 fisher. It was not that he didn't want to improve quickly, but his aptitude was too poor. It was already a fantasy for him to upgrade at such a speed. Every day, they would either go hunting by the sea, cultivate, practice combat skills, or forge weapons. Han Fei even wanted to build a fishing boat, but he didn't have floating stones, so it was not possible. 3 years later, Han Fei had become a great fishing master, and he had become a young leader in the Heavenly Water Village. However, the island area of the Heavenly Water Village was disappearing at a speed of nearly 1 kilometer a year, so Han Fei couldn't just sit idle. He had to establish a fleet and find a way to connect to other towns. Without a fishing boat, they could only use human lives to continuously explore the route. When he was exploring the route, Han Fei ran into the dragon eel. 6 of the 7 boats sank. When fighting the dragon eel, Han Fei watched old Han being slapped into the water. He wanted to save him, but if he got off the boat, the last boat would also sink. On this boat, there was Tang Ge and He Xiaoyu. At the moment when old Han sank into the sea, he stuck his head out and said, I'm going to see your mother. Live well and walk out of here. After a while, Han Fei looked at the corpse of the dragon eel in front of him. Without saying a word, Tang Ge was also sad and sat with Han Fei. He Xiaoyu squatted next to them, trying to comfort them, but she didn't know what to say. Han Fei's mind was actually exceptionally clear. This was a choice he made. He couldn't help but think of the conversation he had with the judge in the first level of the purgatory. He said, there is no absolutely right choice, nor is there absolutely wrong choice. The choice at the right time is the best choice. The merits and losses that come with the choice are just the price to pay. Although he still maintained the same attitude, mental torture was inevitable. Han Fei probably already knew the trick of great monarch reincarnation. He would let the people around him die one by one. If this is the only way to comprehend the law of death, so what if I don't? Unfortunately, no one answered him. Han Fei smiled self-mockingly. Yes, as the judge said, from the moment he entered the 10 directions purgatory, he couldn't stop. He could only bite the bullet and walk over. Sure enough, 2 days after old Han died, he found a new land, the Blue Sea town, and successfully met the genius cultivators Xia Xiaochan, Luo Xiaobai, Zhang Xuanyu, Lu Renquang, as well as Old Bai, Old Jiang, and the others. When they appeared, Han Fei spat. He knew that this reincarnation was fake. Even if it seemed that it couldn't Be more real, it was just a piece of ancient history. These people weren't the real Xiao Shaochan and the others. The Heavenly Water Village and the Blue Sea Town must just be fabricated names. However, no matter who they were, it was very likely that these people had really existed. However, according to the personality of great monarch reincarnation, they would die one by one in front of him. As Han Fei expected, when he tried to connect the Heavenly Water Village and the Blue Sea Town, He Xiaoyu died in his arms. Actually, I think you know. I just didn't expect that I would tell you one day. I like you, and I don't want to die. What a pity. Soon after He Xiaoyu's death, the environment in the ocean became more and more dangerous. The islands were blocked by seawater, and it was almost impossible to cross them. Some islands were directly submerged by seawater, and no one there returned alive. Han Fei knew that the age of sea demons had come. According to the time, the people here didn't even have a fixed cultivation system. Besides, the sea demons had just risen, so the time should be in the age of the gods. The primordial land fell apart, and all the races suffered a catastrophe. The gods were gone, the descendants of gods were sealed, and the entire sea realm, and even the entire sea of stars were in a revival stage. This was a blank period, a sign that the primordial era had turned into the age of gods. Han Fei's spiritual heritage was limited. Although his growth wouldn't stop, his speed wasn't that fast. The number of people he could save could be counted on one hand. Therefore, he established a fleet, reacquainted with Xiao Shaochan and others, and led the fleet to seek survival in the age of sea demons. For ordinary people, this was doomsday. The first group to follow the team were naturally from Heavenly Water Village. They themselves knew that if they didn't leave, they would eventually die. Therefore, a huge fleet began to navigate among the islands under the Blue Sea Town. When the route to the Thousand-Star City was opened, the fleet became even more prosperous. Different from his adventures in the past, although Han Fei had countless cultivation techniques, no matter how he tried to change his spiritual heritage, seek opportunities, or even get the countless opportunities he wanted, his strength couldn't improve quickly. This situation lasted for 300 years. Han Fei unknowingly ruled the Thousand-Star City, but he still couldn't resist the one after another invasion of sea demons. In the past 300 years, he could only watch tens of thousands of islands under the jurisdiction of the Thousand-Star City sink and be destroyed one after another. He had wanted to explore the giant islands outside the Thousand-Star City countless times, but in the vast sea, he couldn't find another giant island, despite sending countless fleets. Finally, on this day 300 years later, there was only Thousand-Star City left in the Thousand-Star City, standing alone on the sea. Everyone's mood fell to the valley. Too many people didn't want to fight anymore. On this day, the sea demon tide came again. Han Fei, who was in the city, suddenly found that this scene was just like the battle in the heavenly desolate city that he and Xiao Shaochan experienced back then. Looking around, the four seas were all his enemies, and most of the human beings here, including himself, would die here. Over the years, Han Fei had been used to death. He had watched the first batch of people who followed him all die. He had considered the true meaning of death countless times, but every time, he felt that this reincarnation world was not teaching him the law of death at all, but torturing him, a kind of mental torture. Or rather, this reincarnation was teaching him to face death. At this moment, everybody was fighting. Han Fei wanted to give up, because they had no chance of winning this battle. Even if there was a 1 in a million chance, he would try. However, there was no such thing as a 1 in a million chance. This was a dead end. Beside Han Fei, Tang Gu had already become a brave and strong expert. He patted Han Fei's shoulder and said, "I know you have tried your best. To be honest, if I had known that this would happen, I would have gone with Mom and Dad back then. At least, I wouldn't have to suffer. Brother, after this battle, you can take a rest." Han Fei didn't speak, but watched Tang Gu leave. Zhang Xuanyu smiled and said, "Fei Fei, to be honest, I have been looking forward to dying on the sea. I envy those who have died in battle and miss old Bai and the others." Lu Renquang held a dozen skewers of barbecue in his hand, chewing and saying, "What a pity. I won't be able to eat these again." Han Fei finally said slowly, "Then take a few more bites now." Lu Renquang laughed. "It's about time. I hope I can have a good sleep later. I can have everything in my dream." Luo Xiaobai took a deep look at Han Fei and said calmly, "I'm leaving. If there's a chance, try to break out of here and have a look of the outside world." Han Fei's eyelids twitched, and Xia Xiaochan gently took his hand. "I'm with you." Okay. The slaughter turned into bloody flowers. On the first day of the bloody battle, Tang Gu was drowned in the fish tide. Zhang Xuanyu defended one side with his spear, but he was swallowed by the sea demon tide in the end. Although Han Fei knew that they were not the people he knew, they had been together for more than 300 years. Besides, wouldn't the ominous battle be like the sea demon tide today? If one day, he was also so powerless in the face of the ominous, would he have to watch them die one after another? Han Fei fought mechanically until he found that only Xia Xiaochan was left beside him, and when he looked up, there was no longer a living person standing. Xia Xiaochan was dying and revealed the last smile at Han Fei. "I'm leaving. Idiot." When Xia Xiaochan fell, Han Fei finally couldn't hold back the indescribable pain and burning fury in his heart anymore. At that moment, he seemed to suddenly understand something. Why did the undead exist? Was it because they wanted to continue living? Obviously not. When death became a common companion, whether one was alive or dead, it no longer mattered. Did the undead cultivate to continue cultivating? But what was the purpose of cultivation? Endless battles, countless life and death separations. What was the point of such cultivation? Every undead cultivator had a reason, and the death god was no exception. Why did he create the undead cultivation technique? Perhaps, in the final analysis, he still couldn't achieve the ultimate affectionless. Was it because there were too many people he couldn't bear to part with? Suddenly, Han Fei asked, "Why didn't you choose to die?" At that moment, everything around him seemed to be frozen, and a calm and magnetic voice said indifferently, "Because they can't die in vain. Otherwise, what are our efforts worth? Therefore, I was born from death and want to kill. To the end of the world. I want them to follow me to seek an answer." In the next moment, Han Fei was drowned by the endless tide of sea demons. He felt that his consciousness was fading, and it was weirdly quiet. He didn't think at all, but he seemed to exist. Han Fei didn't know if he was alive or dead. If he had to describe his current state, it would be to describe it as empty, quiet, and blank. He couldn't feel time or life. It was as if he was wandering in the sea of stars and had seen the endless desolation in the sea of stars. but he didn't have any memories of it. Han Fei seemed to see two lights and wanted to follow them. He followed the two lights for a long time, but he couldn't catch up with them. After an unknown period of time, at a certain unintentional moment, he seemed to see the appearance of the two lights clearly. The two scimitars seemed a little familiar. Hope? Han Fei seemed to suddenly regain consciousness. He suddenly woke up from this chaos. He still had a road to walk and a war to fight. He remembered what the person said. Those people couldn't die in vain. Someone had to find an answer. It was also at this moment that a fuzzy figure seemed to appear in this endless desolation and silence. The man said casually, "Do you feel it?" Buzz. At that moment, Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes and felt the return of all his power. The moment his perception returned, the figure in front of him turned from blurry to reality. In front of his eyes, there was a white-robed man standing, with his hands behind his back. The man said casually, "Fire of hope? You woke up earlier than I expected." Han Fei suddenly came back to his senses. The 300 years of experience seemed to be vivid in his mind. The feeling of emptiness and chaos also lingered in his heart. The man said leisurely again, "What did you comprehend?" Han Fei tried to calm himself down and slowly said, "Death has no law. Death is a state, a piece of chaos, and this state is eternal immortality, but also like death." What else? The light in Han Fei's eyes became brighter and brighter. Death is not the end of everything, but the beginning of everything. There are no laws in the world, but because of the beginning, there are laws and great chaos. So. The man in white chuckled. So what? Han Fei's eyelids twitched as he said with difficulty, "So, everything is born from death, including life." No, the void is not in death. Time is not either. Death, void, and time. At this moment, Han Fei understood. He suddenly understood why there were 3 temples in this world. It was because these 3 were the beginnings of chaos. The laws of life were one level weaker than these 3. But Han Fei vaguely felt that something was still wrong. Without the void, time was meaningless. Without life, death was also meaningless. Therefore, at that level, life was weaker than death. Death was the source of life. However, in a sense, life and death were equal. Han Fei said, "Therefore, there is no law of death in this world at all. Instead, there is the infinite tolerance of death. You used this tolerance to create the undead, mixing death and life. Therefore, the undead creatures are not real dead things, but a special life form between life and death." At that moment, the eternal darkness spiritual heritage in Han Fei's body began to tremble. The man in white said, "I told you from the beginning that once you walk into the 10 directions purgatory, there's no turning back. You've comprehended it. So, you will never die again." Han Fei's feelings at this moment were extremely complicated. The man in white said that he would never die again. It was indeed literal. He would never die again. As long as the void was there, time was there, and the death chaos was there, he would not die. However, immortality was not an absolutely good thing. He wouldn't die, but if he was scattered, he would return to the state of no memory, no feelings, and boundless quietness. Then, at some point in time, he would suddenly revive. However, perhaps when he revived again, things had changed. He wasn't dead. But everything related to him might have been completely erased. Just like in the past 300 years, in the end, he was the only one left. Han Fei suddenly regretted coming to the immortal temple, because at this moment, he didn't even have the right to die. And the experience of the past 300 years was actually telling him that no matter how long the people around him could live and how strong they were, they might not be able to survive him in the end. In this vast sea of stars, he would eventually become a lonely existence. Han Fei felt fear, a fear that he couldn't die. He couldn't help but look at the white-robed man in front of him. Senior Death God? Han Fei thought of this person. He was the man who once appeared in the Tao Enlightenment Palace of the Divine Capital Dynasty, and he was also the one who helped him sever the negative. It's me. Han Fei immediately said, Senior Death God, if this is only the 7th purgatory, what will the subsequent levels of the purgatory be like? The levels of the purgatory behind? The Death God said indifferently, you've finished the 10 directions. Purgatory. Huh? I just experienced a reincarnation. The Death God slowly turned his head, but Han Fei couldn't see his face clearly. He said, stepping into the reincarnation, you were in the 7th level of the purgatory. I forgot to tell you that if you die in the reincarnation, you will really die. Really dead? How is it possible? Han Fei was shocked. I died once? The Death God's voice was calm. How can you know death without experiencing death? The entire reincarnation is the 7th level of the purgatory. During this period of endless life and death separation, mental torture is the 8th level of the purgatory, and the 9th is death. Han Fei's pupils were constricted. I've really died once. Suddenly, Han Fei asked, how long have I been dead? 300 years. You have too many opportunities that others can't have. Even in death, there is a power to guide you to revive. Therefore, it only took you 300 years to comprehend death. Han Fei's heart trembled. 300 years in reincarnation, 300 years in reality. He had spent a lot of time on this trip. But on second thought, it seemed that time was no longer the most important thing for him. At this moment, eternal darkness spiritual heritage was operating in Han Fei's body. Death was not a law, but a state. After comprehending this state, Han Fei knew that there was no need for him to pursue the existence of the law of death. Han Fei asked again, Senior Death God, since the 9th level of the purgatory is death, what about the 10th? The Death God sighed slightly. In this world, the creatures of all races have experienced bumps, hardships, love, hate, emotions, and desires. Isn't this the most difficult purgatory in the world? Han Fei thought for a moment and realized that it was true. Since he was young, all kinds of feelings had popped up in his heart. However, he was here to find the law of death, but it was unnecessary now. After all, death was just a state. He had already understood the power of death. Han Fei asked one last question. Senior Death God, is there no higher path? Is there no power in this world beyond death, void, and time? The Death God shook his head slightly. I don't know, at least not for now. Therefore, you need to walk the rest of the road yourself. In the end, Han Fei just cupped his hands. Thank you for your 10 directions. Purgatory, Senior Death God. The Death God nodded slightly. It's time to open the path of reincarnation. Han Fei thought to himself, sure enough, he knew that the path of reincarnation was with me, and he had known it a long time ago. Senior, do you know why the path of reincarnation is with me? Does this matter? Hanfei nodded solemnly. Yes. The death god chuckled. Then find the answer yourself. Hanfei curled his lips slightly. He wasn't surprised by the answer of the death god at all. It seemed that he had always been shrouded in a huge mystery. No one had ever helped him solve this mystery, but they didn't seem to mind him knowing this mystery. Hanfei cupped his hands. In that case, I'll take my leave. The death god waved his hand. Go. Perhaps you don't have much time left. Hanfei paused and nodded slightly. In the next moment, as Hanfei activated the distanceless gate, the number 3 distanceless gate of the chaotic ice domain suddenly appeared here. When he saw the death god, the distanceless gate trembled slightly. The death god waved his hand. You embarked on this path yourself. It's meaningless to regret it. Therefore, while there's still time, do whatever you want. Hanfei came to the distanceless gate, paused, and said, I also want to try killing my way to the end of the world. Buzz. Hanfei left the immortal temple. Although he had never seen the immortal temple or the true appearance of any Yama, he had indeed obtained a great opportunity from here. If this was really an opportunity. It was also at this moment that Hanfei understood that the 3 temples might be older than he had imagined, but all of this didn't seem to be important. Death God, eldest senior brother, and master of time were very likely the 3 strongest existences in the known chaos. The 3 of them represented 3 extremes, but even so, they were still no match for the ominous. How powerful was the so-called ominous? Hanfei couldn't measure the standard, but he knew that he couldn't embark on these 3 paths, because these were the 3 paths of failure, even if they were all very strong. Returning to the sea realm, Hanfei sighed. He had missed the gathering of the Void Temple again. It seemed that from the moment he stepped out of the chaotic wasteland, even attending the gathering of the Void Temple had become a luxury. 300 years had passed. God knew what had happened in the sea realm. At this time, Xiao Shaochan might have already rushed to the West Wilderness. Hanfei thought for a moment and activated the void mark. Eldest senior brother. Little junior brother, are you ready? Hanfei said firmly, I'm ready. Eldest senior brother said, wait a moment. Hanfei didn't know what eldest senior brother wanted him to wait for. It was just a moment. He wasn't in such a hurry. At the same time, at the end of the boundless sea of stars, a convergence of blood red and purple, an vast ancient river leading to the unknown. Eldest senior brother suddenly said, Death God, time, come. As soon as eldest senior brother said so, a figure in white appeared beside him. Who else could it be but the Death God? He said, I've watched the river for countless eras, but I haven't seen you walk the river. Eldest senior brother said leisurely, if I leave, will you guard this place? In the next moment, time intertwined, and the dignified voice of the master of Time Temple sounded. If he is guarding it, I'm afraid he will walk in. In the next moment, the master of Time Temple, in a resplendent golden robe, appeared with his hands behind his back. The Death God's voice was calm. Leave the eternal race to me. The path of reincarnation will open, and the monarchs will become gods. If the eternal race dares to pick these countless divine tribulation fruits, they won't be able to go back. Master of Time Temple said indifferently, leave the ominous battlefield to me. Similarly, within 1,000 years, the Time Temple will preside over the ominous battlefields in the 1081 domains of the Sea of Stars. Our Time Temple will block the strongest wave. At this moment, with a chirp, a delicate voice said angrily, "Why do you leave? The most difficult one to our void temple?" The master of the time temple said calmly, "Shenlu, this can't be helped. Your void temple has too few people." "Death god, indeed." Eldest senior brother said indifferently, "All right, there's no dispute about this matter. I'll block the strongest." Ominous. Shenlu curled her lips. "You, forget it. Then I'll be the only one hosting the gatherings in the future. You know my style." Eldest senior brother gave a rare smile. "Got it." Shenlu glared at Death God and Master of Time, and her figure turned incorporeal. In the end, she only left a voice here. "Everyone from the Void Temple, no matter what you are doing at this moment, let's have a meeting. Everyone from the Void Temple, no matter what you are doing at this moment, come have a meeting." Senior Sister Shenli's voice suddenly sounded in Han Fei's mind. He was puzzled. Just a moment ago, it was eldest senior brother speaking, but now it had become Senior Sister Shenlu? Besides, Senior Sister Shenlu asked them to attend the meeting. This was clearly not the time for a gathering. Also, no one was allowed to be absent from this gathering. Han Fei summoned the bronze door and stepped in. As soon as he entered, he heard senior brother Lei Heng say, "Senior sister Shenlu, what's going on? This is not the time for a gathering, right?" Senior brother 6 God was puzzled. "Where is eldest senior brother?" Green Lotus was slightly surprised. "Senior sister Shenlu? Are you hosting the gathering?" Red Lotus, that's a big deal. Senior brother Azure Dragon circled in the sky. "Where is eldest senior brother?" Feng Yu appeared slowly, her body still burning with scorching flames. "Senior Sister Shenlu, you forced me to show my trump card." Han Fei thought to himself, Feng Yu looks so murderous. Where did she go to fight? Senior brother Undead and senior sister Dark Shadow also appeared one after another, but they didn't speak. This time, no one greeted each other, because they were all puzzled. Gulp ah. Fifth senior brother said leisurely, "It doesn't seem like good news." Senior sister Shenlu glanced at Han Fei casually and then said, "There will be no lectures in this gathering. I'll only tell you a piece of news. The path of reincarnation is about to open. A storm of blood is about to sweep across the sea realm and the entire sea of stars. The ominous is returning, and all the battlefields are about to open. Eldest senior brother is very busy. I'll host the future gatherings." Even the Void Temple didn't know Han Fei's secret, so Feng Yu, Lei Heng, senior sister Dark Shadow, senior brother 6 God, and the others were still very shocked. Lei Heng asked, "So suddenly? If the path of reincarnation opens, what about the eternal race? If no one restrains them, what can they do?" Senior sister Shenlu said, "Don't worry. The immortal temple will take care of the eternal race." Huff. Everyone couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Then, senior brother 6 God said, "The path of reincarnation has been opened. I don't know what the other places are like, but in 100 years at most, the sea realm will definitely fall into chaos and conflicts." Shenlu said, "To fend off external threats, one must first ensure internal stability." Little junior brother, Lei Heng, junior brother 6 God, I don't care how you distribute your tasks. But do please unify the sea realm within a 1,000 years. What I'm talking about is unification. Anyone who resists shall be killed. In 1,000 years, I want a complete sea realm. *T. Han Fei was stunned. What was going on? Was the effect of opening the path of reincarnation so great? Why did Senior Sister Shenlu suddenly become so murderous? Senior Sister Shenlu said, Junior brothers and sisters, our void temple has suffered an internal rebellion. Many talented junior brothers and sisters died in that rebellion. Therefore, although there aren't many people in our void temple now, I don't want a similar situation to happen again. Besides, the ominous has returned. I want a sea realm that is united against the outside world, not a mess. Senior Brother 6 God, yes, Senior Sister Shenlu. Lei Hing said, no problem, Senior Sister Shenlu. However, as for the unification of the sea realm, we should give little junior brother some time to gain experience for the time being. Anyway, within 1,000 years, I promise to take down the sea realm. Han Fei could only bite the bullet and nod. Okay, Senior Sister Shenlu. Senior Sister Shenlu continued to instruct, Old 5, you don't have to guard the chaotic ice domain anymore. The time temple will take over. I'll give you 1,000 years. Fifth Senior Brother clicked his tongue. So hasty? Shenlu said, this is the time that eldest Senior Brother bought for you. Fifth Senior Brother said seriously, which was really rare for him, okay. Then, Shenlu looked at Senior Brother Azure Dragon. You too. 1,000 years. Senior Brother Azure Dragon nodded slightly. Okay. Shenlu continued, Green Lotus, Red Lotus, you don't have to stay in the chaotic sea all the time. The time limit I'll give you too is 10,000 years. Green Lotus and Red Lotus looked at each other. Understood, Senior Sister Shenlu. Senior Sister Shenlu didn't continue to arrange for Senior Brother Undead and Senior Sister Dark Shadow. Instead, she said, everyone, since you've come this far, you should know what we'll face in the end. This time, it's different from the ominous return of the Age of Gods. This ominous return is comparable to the one in the primordial era. And that time all races were almost wiped out. Everyone was refreshed. Had it finally come? Was the epic battle that concerned the lives of all races about to begin again? When eldest Senior Brother was here, everything seemed to be casual, and no one felt any pressure. Today, Senior Sister Shenlu directly piled the mountain-like pressure on everyone's shoulders. It was precisely because there were few people in the Void Temple that everyone had to try their best. Han Fei knew that Senior Sister Shenlu must have given Fifth Senior Brother and the others 1,000 years to become gods. There was no second possibility. In fact, Han Fei felt that Fifth Senior Brother and the others had long surpassed ordinary great monarchs. Instead of calling them great monarchs, they were more like gods in the great monarch realm. Now, they still needed Senior Sister Shenlu to personally urge them before they were willing to make a breakthrough. There was no telling what they had done earlier. After that, before everyone could leave, Senior Sister Shenlu ran away. Everyone was still in the Void Temple when Lei Hing said leisurely, who can tell me why the opening of the path of reincarnation causes such a great uproar? Fifth Senior Brother said, why bother to ask this question? Hurry up and control your foresighted lightning domain. Don't get involved in the matters of the sea realm. Lei Hing was speechless. Senior Sister Shenlu just instructed me. Fifth Senior Brother said, that's for you to clean up the mess. Senior brother 6 God sighed slightly. I wanted to cultivate for another 30,000 years, but unfortunately. Senior brother Azure Dragon's voice was dignified. Alright, everyone should have heard it. Time is tight now. We should make breakthroughs and gain experience. Hanfei suddenly said, Senior brother Azure Dragon, I might go to your place later. Senior brother Azure Dragon, okay, then I'll wait for you for 300 years. Everyone left one after another, not in the mood to chat. Senior brother Undead and senior sister Dark Shadow didn't speak, and senior sister Shunlu didn't arrange anything for them, so Hanfei tacitly believed that they knew the current situation very well. Not to mention fifth senior brother, he must know everything. As for senior brother 6 God, senior brother Lei Heng, senior sister Shunlu tacitly agreed that these two people had the means to clean up the mess for her and take down the sea realm, which proved that they could become gods at any time, and their combat power was abnormally powerful. As for Fengyu, she should be about the same as him now. Although he was trapped in reincarnation for 300 years, Fengyu shouldn't have broken through to the great monarch realm in just 300 years, right? Or rather, if she made another breakthrough, she would only be a great monarch. As for senior sister Green Lotus and senior sister Red Lotus, they should have some great secrets. After all, they walked the same path as him, the Tao of extreme balance, but he didn't know how far they had gone. Senior sister Shunlu gave fifth senior brother and the others 1,000 years, but she gave Green Lotus and senior sister Red Lotus 10,000 years. Obviously, there was something he didn't know. On second thought, Hanfei activated the void mark. In the next moment, senior sister Shunlu replied, Little junior brother. What's the matter? Hanfei thought to himself, now even when he activated the void mark, it was senior sister Shunlu who replied. It could be seen that the matter of his opening the path of reincarnation was indeed serious, and even tied eldest senior brother down. Hanfei said, Senior sister Shunlu, I have a technique that I want to give to senior sister Green Lotus and senior sister Red Lotus. Oh? Give it to me. I'll give it to them. Hanfei didn't hesitate. Since senior sister Green Lotus and senior sister Red Lotus walked the Tao of extreme balance, the God-fiend body should also be a bottleneck on their path. But it was also possible that they had already passed this bottleneck. But in any case, he had to give this technique away. At this moment, there was no point in keeping it to himself. The technique was absorbed by a void, and then senior sister Shunlu said, Little junior brother, I'm not trying to pressure you. If you can't take down the sea realm in 1,000 years, it doesn't matter. After all, your path is not in the sea realm. 10,000 years, I promise you still have 10,000 years to squander freely. Hanfei said, Thank you, senior sister Shunlu. I'll try my best. Okay. As for taking in disciples, if you don't meet a suitable person for the time being, you can put it aside for the time being. Okay, senior sister. Hanfei thought to himself, if senior sister Shunlu hadn't mentioned it, I would have forgotten. He had no time to take in disciples. Anyway, most of the trial layout of the Void Temple had been set up. He just needed to wait and see if anyone took the bait. After the hasty gathering, Hanfei's heart stirred, and the drop of nether river water, given by Chen Lingsu, appeared in front of him. Now, his original law had been confirmed, which was the law of life and law of death. Although there was no specific law of death, it was an absolute state. It didn't matter if there was a law or not. It also represented his original law. After all, the significance of an origin law was to encompass all laws. And death, even the law of life, was included. It could be said that in this world, except for the void and time, there shouldn't be any law that death couldn't encompass. Buzz. A nebula appeared. With a thought from Han Fei, the creation divine chain appeared under his feet and took him into the chaotic Nether River. In the Nether River, it took Han Fei 3 days to come to the graveyard of gods again. The moment Han Fei reappeared in the graveyard of gods, the star tombs began to tremble. A loud voice rumbled, "He's back." There was a trace of anticipation in the voice of a god. So fast? Just 300 years? A god asked, "Little friend Han Fei, can the path of reincarnation really be opened?" Han Fei's voice was confident and firm. Of course. Several hours later, Han Fei came to Chenlingsu's star tomb again. This goddess was playing chess with herself. Here, hundreds of remnant souls of gods had already gathered. Seeing Han Fei return, she sighed slightly. "It seems that I thought you could find him back." Han Fei sighed helplessly. "I didn't have time to find him at all. However, if you wait on the path of reincarnation, there might be a trace of hope to meet him. I wonder what kind of spiritual treasure Senior wants to give me this time." Chenlingsu smiled. "You can't wait anymore?" Han Fei chuckled, but then he said solemnly, "Seniors, let me tell you clearly that the reincarnation cycle will open today." Buzz. The divinities of the gods here surged. A god couldn't help but sigh. "What can I say? We were supposed to die, but we're welcoming a new life?" A god sighed. "Fate is really unpredictable." A god reminded them, "Don't be happy too early. I believe you know what it means that the path of reincarnation opens. Once this path opens, the sea realm and the sea of stars will be in chaos." A god said, "It's better than not opening it. If the path of reincarnation doesn't open, all races will be destroyed sooner or later." A god sneered. "These be asterisk stars from the eternal race. After I reincarnate and become a god again, I'll definitely kill these be asterisk stars." A god shook his head slightly. "The eternal race has been living in the soul sea for too long and has too many strong masters. Even if we become gods again in the future, I'm afraid we won't be a match for them. We still have to wait and hold back. Once the path of reincarnation opens, the path of the soul sea will be severed. The eternal race will be punished sooner or later. There's no rush." Chenlingsu said, "Okay, be quiet. Since this day has come, there's no need to waste time here. Take out the things you prepared for Han Fei." A burly projection of a god appeared. Han Fei knew that it was a refining master. The god laughed. "Little friend Han Fei, this weapon is a token of our appreciation. The only pity is that we can't witness its glory." A god sighed. "Old man, don't sigh. If you cultivate fast, you might have a chance to see it." Han Fei thought to himself, what kind of weapon is it that even these gods want to witness its power? The god waved his hand, and a huge chess card covered 100,000 kilometers of the void, spinning and shrinking from time to time. When it finally landed in front of Han Fei, it was only 1 meter square. Information immediately appeared in Han Fei's eyes. Name: Creation Chessboard. Introduction. The creation chessboard is made of 361 pieces of divine bones of different gods. When it's cast, the gods fuse the peak power of their lives into it. The chessboard spans 19 paths, with charm and divinity as the pieces. 360 pieces can be placed. Every time a piece is placed, it will be a blow from a god. Quality 1-time ultra quality nature spiritual treasure. Effect 1. When a piece is placed, a god will appear. Every time a piece is placed, it will be like a blow from a god. Effect 2. Killing trap. Every time 24 pieces fall, a killing trap can be formed. The power of the killing trap can be 3 times the power of a single chess piece. Effect 3. Dragon slaying. Every time 180 pieces fall, it can form a dragon slaying trap and unleash 10 times the power of a single chess piece. Effect 4. Finishing. It'll launch a finishing blow when all the chess pieces are placed. That blow can fuse the power of 100 gods, and the lasting time is uncertain. Can't be reforged. Unrefined. Note: the strongest ultra-quality nature spiritual treasure in history, whose power far exceeds most nature treasures.